This episode of the Cult Pop Show podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scene at the end of each episode, or join us for our monthly movie club Zoom call where we discuss a film together, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopshow. It's time to play the music. Aye, aye, Captain.
Richard, can I ask you a question for the start of this episode?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could tell me why are there so many songs about rainbows?
Is that the whole question?
That's the question, yeah. I was wondering if you could tell me that.
All right. Well, actually, if you want to lead straight into some dumb IMDb trivia, I usually do have an answer to that.
Oh, can I guess what it is? Can I guess what knowing what IMDb trivia is written, how it's written, I reckon I can guess functionally what this IMDb trivia is trying to get at.
What?
Is it going to say something like to the effect of like, in Rainbow Connection, Kermit the Frog asks why there are so many songs about rainbows, and in doing so, created the definitive song about rainbows. Is it something like that?
No, it's not actually.
Oh.
I'll put a pin in that just while we say, welcome along to the Cult Pop Show podcast. This is Film Franchise Fortnights, a show where every 2 weeks, myself, Richard, and AJ, my co-host, we watch and discuss a different film franchise, often randomly chosen. However, the Muppets was a suggestion by our Patreon, where for $1 or more, you can suggest every second franchise we do. This was a 2-part episode. Last week we did the straight to TV /VHS/DVD films, and today we're doing the theatrical films. Of course, Rainbow Connection, the song from the Muppet movie, famously opens with the line, "Why there's so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side." And you're doing dumb IMDb trivia straight out of the gate. This is a segment. IMDb trivia is user submitted, so anyone can just fucking write whatever they want on it. And this piece of IMDb trivia says, to answer Kermit the Frog's immortal question, there actually aren't that many songs about rainbows. Maybe only a handful of famous ones. Rainbow by Casey Musgroves, Somewhere Over the Rainbow by the Wizard of Oz, which is presumably what the song is referencing, because it's Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I'm Always Chasing Rainbows by Harold Carroll, To Look to the Rainbow by Finian's Rainbow, Chasing Rainbows by Big Frida, Sing a Rainbow by Peggy Lee, and of course, Rainbow Connection by Paul Williams, who wrote Rainbow Connection.
I only know one of those songs, and it's other than Rainbow Connection, and that's Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's
actually not finished. I'm less than halfway through this piece of IMDb
trivia.
There's a few others, but they're pretty obscure. There's actually many, many more songs about rain. 1, Singing in the Rain. 2, Rain by Madonna. 3, I Can See Clearly Now, The Rain Is Gone by Jimmy Cliff. Rain, Rain, Go Away, which is a nursery rhyme. Don't Rain in My Parade by Barbara Streisand from Funny Girl. I Think It's Going to Rain Today by Randy Newman. Purple Rain by Prince. Here Comes the Rain Again by Eurythmics. It's Raining Men by the Weather Girls, which actually I'd say technically isn't about rain.
It's true.
Who'll Stop the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. September Dogs, Come On, Rain Down by Melissa Etheridge. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head by BJ Thomas. And 13, It Will Rain by Bruno Mars. So just and fun fact, here's 13 songs that are about rain.
Whoever's writing that IMDb trivia, no one was there to tell them to stop. You've written your piece of trivia, you know. I thought of 2 more, though. There's that one by Creed. Did that mention that one?
What one?
The one that goes, "It feels like it's gonna rain like this for days."
Nice. What was the second one?
Then there's Yuma, Arizona, which goes, "When it rains, it pours in Yuma, Arizona. When it rains, it pours." I forget who that's by, though. It's by Adrian someone or other. Liked it in high school. Anyway.
They also... There's Rain by Dragon, which is a Kiwi band, and they also mentioned Who'll Stop the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival, but didn't mention Have You Ever Seen the Rain by Creedence Clearwater Revival. Anyway,
Richard, I'm drinking a Stoke NPA. I got this from as a work present. I'm not a beer guy. This thing is full of lemon wedges, so I can get through it. So I thought that's a little fun because the Muppets is a little more mature than I was expecting, I guess. So jumping in with a little more mature than maybe people were expecting. AJ drinking a beer, the hallmark of maturity.
I'm drinking water, and what is water if not rain?
Holy shit. And yeah. So this, let's talk about the Muppets, dude. I've got Muppet fever. We've been, we said this, did we say this on the last episode or do we say this on the Patreon episode where we talked about a shorter Muppet thing? We're like, I don't remember the last time I was this entrenched in a franchise.
I willingly gave myself over to a franchise like this. Like there's ones like James Bond where you're like, oh my god, my life has been fucking consumed by this dog shit franchise. Whereas like the Muppets, I'm like, yes, I've been listening to like so much Muppets on Spotify. If you look at my Spotify search history, it's all the Muppets.
And also, I think part of it as well is because, as we discussed last fortnight, the Muppets expands and extends beyond movies, which we only cover movies on Film Franchise Fortnights. But the Muppets, of course, has an entire media landscape of TV shows and shorts and video games, I guess, and things like that. That mainly TV stuff, I should say. That really like. Yeah. If you're wanting to check out a Muppet thing, it's not very hard to find it, Yeah. You can find Muppet stuff wherever you look.
Yeah. But yeah, so of course the main kind of thing is the Muppet Show, which was debuted in 1974. 1976.
I watched half an episode of it last night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
I got a bit bored, but only because I was really late and I was kind of tired. But it was the episode with the first Muppet recording of Mahamana, which isn't a Muppet exclusive song, which surprised me. But that was cool. It was hosted by a woman who I was like, I wonder if I'm going to remember this lady's name. And I think it was Julia Prowse.
Nice.
It was season 1, episode 19, I think. If that helps. I think it was one of the first ones to air. Notable observations, Miss Piggy didn't sound like Miss Piggy, but was clearly still voiced by Frank Oz.
Right. So between the mid-season break of season 3 of The Muppet Show, the Muppet movie was produced, which is the first movie we're talking about.
Interesting.
Today. And so this was the first time that the Muppets were brought into the real world, and so there was a lot of complications brought along with that, because obviously when it's just in the Muppet Theatre, you can control everything.
Wow. Okay, yeah. Interesting, yeah.
And so, having to interact them, obviously the film opens with Rainbow Connection, which is Kermit playing a banjo, which is the first time a hand puppet's entire body was seen on film.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And it was done by getting a 55-gallon drum with a breathing tube coming out of it, which Jim Henson was in the water controlling with a little monitor so he could monitor his performance.
Nice. I did wonder about that. I'll mention this now because otherwise I'll never mention it. Last fortnight we watched Kermit's Swamp Years, which was supposed to be a prequel to all of this stuff. It doesn't not tie in to the, it's surprisingly canonically sound to what we see in the theatrical movies, which I thought was pretty nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did wonder about how because he's clearly in a swamp.
Yeah.
It's not a fake swamp.
He's in the middle of a lake, yeah.
Yeah, so whoever is Jim Henson performing as Kermit has to be under the water to do a lot of that stuff.
But let's go through the plot of this film. So 1979, it's directed by James Frawley, and it's kind of the origin story of the Muppets, right? So that takes place before the Muppet Show.
It's a road movie of them going from wherever they live to LA to sign a big contract, where they meet most of the main characters along the way, including Well, not including, but they also run into the villain who wants Kermit to be his Ronald McDonald
Doc Hopper.
Doc Hopper, who wants Kermit to be his Ronald McDonald-esque mascot for his franchise chain of Frog's Legs fast food.
Yeah.
And Kermit doesn't want to do it, and so he's pursued by that villain all the way through. And then they get to LA and they just sign a contract from Orson Welles.
Yeah, it's fucking great. It's a fantastic ending. So you like literally they manage to get in front of Lou Lord, who gives them a standard rich and famous contract.
Yeah.
Which actually becomes a big plot point in a later film.
Yeah.
And then it all kind of just like works out fine. But also the film was bookended by the Muppets in the theater watching their first film.
Yes, so this is something I think we need to keep track of for each movie, is there are two levels of Muppet reality. There is, this is a film the Muppets have made, and then there's, this is happening to the Muppets. And surprisingly, the Muppet movie, even though it's an origin story, is like a retelling of their origin story, which was presumably not filmed. So
it's a biopic starring themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Which you would maybe, it's weird to think of this one as, because obviously like A Christmas Carol is them telling a story, but this is like
them putting on a play kind of
thing. And you'll be surprised which ones happen to be based in reality and which ones aren't. So
yeah, it is. What did you think of the film?
Okay, it starts.
Had you seen it before?
No, I'd never seen it before. I'd only seen Christmas Carol, the 2011 soft reboot, and I remember flashes of Treasure Island when it would have come out in '96.
Yeah.
So I hadn't seen it again since. I'll tell you, like, The Great Muppet Caper and Takes Manhattan, and completely, like, never seen a frame from either of those films. But I loved it. I thought that it opens on Rainbow Connection, which I'm so enamored by. I've been thinking about and listening to it, obviously, and just thinking about what it means, because it stands out as a kids musical movie song, because it's not really clear what he's singing about. It's not like
I want to talk about that as well, because it is the message of the song is like really interesting, I think.
Yes.
But keep going.
So it's not like I don't know, I Can Go the Distance from Hercules, where it's like tangibly about what he wants and where he wants to go. It's more like just Kermit singing a nice little not love song, like a ballad that you're not supposed to, like, usually in movie musicals, you're supposed to be explicitly thinking about the message being communicated through the song. That's actually their purpose for a lot of it. And yet, I wouldn't categorize Rainbow Connection as that.
It's a bit of an I Want song, but it's not super clear what I mean. It is, obviously, it's like the chorus of the song. But to me, I love, because, like you say, it does stand out a lot. It was nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars. Kermit performed at the Oscars in 1980. It lost to It Goes Like It Goes from Norma Ray, some fucking song no one's ever heard of. But like one of the interesting things about Rainbow Connection is it's like the opening song from the Muppet movie has been it's been covered by the Carpenters, Willie Nelson, Sarah McLachlan, Jason Mraz, Weezer, Gwen Stefani. It's like all these like insane, people that it's like, why are they, covering some dumb kids movie song? But I think that there's such a beautiful like universality to it, and like I think what kind of makes the song work, and for me anyway, is like from its outset, it appears to be a cynical song. Because it's all about like, why are there so many songs about rainbows and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions and only illusions, and rainbows. I'm just saying the lyrics now. And rainbows have nothing to hide, and that's very like it sounds cynical, being like all these people, and it talks about like what's so amazing that keeps us stargazing. My favorite line in the song is when he talks about who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on the morning star. Somebody thought of that and someone believed it. And look what it's done so far. And it's all very cynical. But the chorus is, someday we'll find it the Rainbow Connection, and it's talking about like there has to be a reason all these people are singing about this, and the lovers, the dreamers, and me myself are going to find what that connection is.
Yeah,
and it's gorgeous.
It's saying it almost pulls the rug out from under you, because it's saying this is all superstitious nonsense, but my God, believers are so happy. My God, believers have done it. They've achieved it. So there is something. There is a magic. It's a very faith-based song almost. It's like there has to be something more to this, because I've seen those that believe there is more to this receive their wants and their, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's hopeful. It's a song about hope, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really loved that. I love Moving Right Along, which is a song I became aware of when one of my students sent me it maybe 2 or 3 months ago, not knowing that I'd be doing the Muppets, and only a few months later, which I think is such a fun fucking song, and again conceptually it's so interesting. So the song is, and they reuse it as like a musical motif for whenever the show gets on the road again, basically, and it goes like dang 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 dang, and so like it'll play that little interlude whenever they start moving again, and I love it because the concept of the song is essentially Fozzie and Kermit singing about, they're on the road and they've got a destination in mind. And then right before the chorus, one of them says something kind of poorly worded or awkward, and it kind of stops them. And then they go, moving right along, dun-ga-dun, dun-ga-dun. And it's like moving right along, literally moving the car, and moving right along as in, don't worry about it, let's move on. Because he's like, we'll hitchhike, bus, or yellow cab it. And he's like, yellow cab it? Moving right along. It's great. It's so funny. And I think it encapsulates what's special about the Muppets comedy is it's very human, and it's very timeless, and very based in like people just being people and saying silly things and doing silly things. And like a lot of the Muppets is purely just funny because it's a big funny looking bear doing the joke. When we first meet Fozzie, he's doing stand up at a bar, and his opening joke is something about like, what did the fat guy say to da 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 da, and this fat guy stands up and he's like, what did he say? And he's like, well, he didn't say anything, and everybody thought he was great and didn't have any problems with him at all. It's so funny. It's like, they're so human. They're such human characters, and it's so easy to say that thinking about like it's humans voicing them. But we talked about this as well, is like just the artistry of puppetry is the best it's ever been in the Muppets. Yeah. And in this movie especially, it's filmmaking, man. Like it's filmmaking in the sense that like, and what's so cool about filmmaking is it's essentially, here's a box, the audience can't see outside this box. So everything outside the box makes everything that happens in the box work, right? So you see Kermit walk down a cobblestone pathway. The only reason you think he's in a cobblestone pathway is because you cut to a wide and saw it. When you cut to the mid shot, there are trenches that men are walking through, holding their hands up, bobbing their hand up and down to make Kermit move. And it's filmmaking, it's magic.
Yeah. Like so I mentioned like following on from that, there's the full body shot of Kermit in the lake, on the swamp, I should say. But then there's also probably the most difficult shot to pull off was him riding a bicycle.
It's how do you make that shot?
It was like a marionette crane. Wow. And like all these different pulleys. It's insane. Because
they mask out the marionette strings and stuff as well.
Yeah. Because like they have strings that control their hands, or like they're on sticks. But yeah, I have seen this movie before, and yeah, I love it. Like, the fact that like it's such a unique brand of humor. I mean, it's kind of come full circle now with that. It's like the most popular thing. But meta being the new funny. But I mean, the Muppets kind of like. It feels like they really brought that into the forefront. Like there's a whole plot point in this where they get to the next from the point A to point B because they read it in the script. They meet what is it, Dr. Mayhem and the Electric Teeth,
No, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. And yeah, and they give them the script, and they meet up with them later, and like, how do you know we'd be here? It's like, it's in the script you gave us.
Yeah, exactly. I think so I gave this movie 4.5 stars out of 5. And I'd like to talk about where that 0.5 knocks off. And that is, it's one of those movies where everything else is so fun in it that it feels like the writers cut themselves a break on making a story arc, because they essentially defeat Doc Hopper by giving Animal a growth serum and turning him into a giant that scares Doc Hopper away.
There was actually a giant puppet as well. It wasn't done with miniatures.
That's awesome. And I like the visual. The visual's fine. It's just you're shown the growth serum 2 minutes before he uses it, you know? So it's not, it's very, and I wouldn't mark it down if I didn't think the Muppets could do it. Like, these are movies that can have story arcs, but I feel like the first 3 don't really. They don't, not in a way that you would think they should, I guess. And it's not even bumming me out. It's more like I have a vision of a slightly better Muppet movie that has like a more complete and more well-told story arc, I guess.
Yeah. Just before we move on, sure about
Moving
the end of the
along.
film. So the film ends with like a reprisal of Rainbow Connection, and the camera pans out to essentially every Muppet ever made in one shot. And they're all moving, and that was essentially just like, they got in 137 extra puppeteers, just basically putting out a call to like the Puppeteers of America, being like, who wants to operate a puppet, like stand in this pit with 200 other people, and operate a Muppet for a wide shot, and like, you know, everyone fucking available did it. But John Landis, the director, is Grover in that final shot.
Grover's in the final shot?
Yeah.
I thought Grover was a Sesame Street exclusive.
It's just like every Muppet puppet in existence. And so, because there's a weird thing where the like Elmo, Grover, etc. are all Muppets, but they're not part of the Muppets.
So I can explain this. I looked this up because we are going to actually be covering some Sesame Street movies in a little bit. Spoilers. Not on this episode, but later down the track. Essentially, you've got to think of it like the Muppets existed. Sesame Street needed characters for its concept, and so Jim Henson was like, I've got the Muppets. So the Muppets are the main characters in Sesame Street. But it's similar to Machete and Spy Kids, where it's like Machete isn't really a spin-off of Spy Kids. It's more that Machete was a character created by Robert Rodriguez that he just put in Spy Kids, as well as reserving him for other things. So it's less like they're spin-offs from each other, because they're owned by completely different conglomerates at this point as well. It's less like they're spin-offs and more like the Sesame Street stars the Muppets, I guess, is a way to think of it.
Well, I think as well that just like from a real world perspective, that any puppet made by the Jim Henson Company can be referred to as a Muppet. It's like that's their kind of brand. But there's like the Muppets is a troupe of actors, who take their name from what they are, kind of thing. But also Tim Burton is in the pit in that final scene as well, operating a puppet.
Which one do you know?
I don't.
No, I bet it was fucking like Sweetums. I bet he's in the Sweetums suit.
Also, Big Bird makes an appearance in the film as well.
Yes,
further blurring the line between Sesame Street and the Muppets.
Yeah, absolutely.
They pass him. He's on his way to break out in public broadcast television, which is obviously reference to the fact that Sesame Street's on PBS. Yeah,
Sesame Street is also. I think Sesame Street is like explicitly set in New York as well. Feels like it is, right? And this movie's about getting to LA, so that it's almost like we're dealing just with the East Coast and West Coast versions of this wild world that sometimes is a movie within a movie and sometimes is not.
Yeah. All right, so moving right along. To
Dugga-dun.
The Great Muppet Caper.
Oh, what does Muppet Movie have on Rotten Tomatoes?
What do you think it has?
95%.
You're close. It's 88.
Nice.
Although,
So
before the end of this episode, there will be a movie which has 95% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, is it the Great Muppet Caper?
It is not. All right, what is the Great Muppet Caper about?
This is the least story-based one for me, so forgive me if I struggle to remember it. There's like a missing jewel, and this one is set in the real world. No, it's not. It's not. No, it's not. It's them. It's like the Muppets putting on a movie where they're playing the characters because
Kermit and Fozzie are playing identical twins.
Yeah, and they are playing detectives. It's a detective movie where like a diamond necklace has gone missing, and so all the characters have the names of their Muppets in real life, but it explicitly says at the start that it's not. They're like, we made a movie and you're going to watch our movie. And so this is the only one directed by Jim Henson, yeah?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, there you go. Is that what it's about? Anything else notable?
Yeah, it's like a weird kind of common occurrence for the like a sequel trope for these kind of things like we had with Herbie and like Beethoven is that one's like a heist thing, and like maybe it's like this could potentially be like the trope inventor of like your sequel has to be a British
because
like
it's set in London as well, which is a significant thing that sets it apart from the first film. But in Muppets Most Wanted, someone makes a joke about how heist comedies never work. I wonder if they were referring to this one.
I do.
And I mean, I don't remember too much from it. There's a hot air balloon scene. It opens and closes with one.
And there's the hot air balloon, and the credits start appearing in the sky, and they like comment on the credits.
Yeah, that's right. This was probably my least favorite of the like classic ones, just because I don't remember any of the songs from it. Do you remember any of the songs?
No, I don't actually.
So yeah, it's just them trying to get the diamond necklace back, and I sat down and watched this movie. I wasn't cheating. I just don't remember it that well, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah.
Oh, there's "Hey a Movie," which was the kind of main song.
Which one? Sorry.
"Hey a Movie."
Okay, I don't remember it.
Yeah. So I do. My favorite joke in this film is like there's a running gag of Kermit and Fozzie being identical twins.
Yeah.
And they keep getting confused for each other, despite obviously being different species. And there's a bit where Kermit is sitting on a park bench by himself, and this couple walk past, and the woman's like, "Oh, look at that bear," and he goes, "That's a frog, honey. Bears have hats."
Oh, it's so great. It's so great. It's so good. Okay, this is the one where they stay at the Happiness Hotel. Sorry, I just needed to pull up the Wikipedia page to remind me of some stuff. Yeah,
and there was a song about the Happiness Hotel as well.
Yeah. And it's this real rundown place. Yeah, Lady Holiday's in it. I feel bad. I feel like I don't remember this one as well, but maybe
no, that's great. Yeah, so it stars Diana Rigg, who passed away recently.
That's right.
Our second Diana Rigg franchise of the year, because she married James Bond in what one is it? On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Yeah.
And it's also stars Charles Grodin from Beethoven. And according to another piece of dumb IMDb trivia, this is Charles Grodin's only Muppet movie.
To be fair, Whoopi Goldberg does have 3.
And what's his name? I've forgotten his name. Ray Liotta has 2 as well.
Yep. So does David Arquette.
Yeah.
What's your Muppet number, bro?
There's also an extended John Cleese scene in this film.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So John Cleese is like, there's a scene where he's talking to his wife while Miss Piggy's trying to...
John Cleese is like he's like Monty Python or something.
Yeah, Piggy's trying to break in because she's told Kermit that's where she lives and she wants to impress him. It's fun. As I say, I think the fact that it has so little story to it makes it hard for me to quite remember.
But
yeah.
Oscar the Grouch also has a cameo.
Mm-hmm.
I like because I did enjoy this film, and like we talked about this last week that there's there's a very definitive flaw to how much I can enjoy the Muppet, to how little I can enjoy the Muppets, and it's quite high. Like the Muppets at their very worst is still great.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, and as like I was thinking about this, like whether or not I would consider myself a lifelong Muppet fan. I think I can. I think because I like you. I remember seeing Muppet Treasure Island when it came out, and I was 3, and I've always liked the Muppets. I've never devoted my life to them in any way. And when we get to Muppets 2011, I could talk a little bit about my experience with that film. But yeah, I think I can say I've been a Muppet fan for, as long as I can remember.
Right. That's the first I've heard you talk about them in the half decade we've been friends.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah, that's not true. We haven't been friends.
That was a very Muppet-esque joke.
Also, it's worth mentioning as well. When we did at the start of this year, we did a podcast, which was all the Patreon suggestions for an off week, and I did my top 10 non-Bond movie theme songs, and I forgot Rainbow Connection, which was a massive oversight on my part.
Damn,
which would
I would
be
have
in
thought
the
a
top,
lifelong Muppet fan,
couple.
dude, would certainly...
I know. Yeah, so I kind of do, like... It feels like we're moving right along very quickly from The Great Muppet Caper. And spoiler alert, we probably will from The Muppets Take Manhattan as well, but I think there's just so many... Like, there's just other things I'm so excited to talk about and that I have so much more to say about. So it's like The Great Muppet Caper, yeah, it's great. But
it's a great Muppet Caper.
Yeah. And what do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
70.
76.
76.
So moving right along to The Muppets Take Manhattan, which came out in 1984. This one was directed by Frank Oz. And what's it about?
Oh wait, I've got a piece of up top useless statistics for the Muppets, the Great Muppet Caper. Something to talk about. I wrote this down and I searched for it just now so I could tell you it. The Great Muppet Caper makes The Muppets our second franchise, featuring a film from the 80s where a character ironically laments that there's never a cab when you need one. Another connection to James Bond, because in A View to a Kill, James Bond says there's never a cab when you need one while atop the Golden Gate Bridge.
That's right.
And in this movie, after a cab drives directly into the Happiness Hotel and destroys a bunch of property, I think it might be Statler or Waldorf or someone who, by the way, love Statler and Waldorf.
Yeah.
I like it. There's never a cab when you need one. So there you go.
I like, do you reckon Statler and Waldorf are like a couple of old queens that like, like an elderly gay couple who just go and just bitch?
Like that Ian McKellen sitcom, whatever that's called.
I don't remember.
There's an Ian McKellen sitcom about a couple of old queens, as you put it.
But yeah, like these two old men who go to the theater together every week and just bitch and moan about it. It's I like the idea that they're this like old gay couple who are like
interesting interpretation. I saw them as proto podcasters.
But they're also like, I saw someone refer to them as like the movie Rat Race?
Mm-hmm.
How it's like the type of old people who like get together and like make ridiculous dares and like bets with each other about things. It's like they're the kind of like those kind of people that they go and they just have lots of money and then kind of like
great. Yeah. Nice.
Rat Race, another John Cleese film as well.
Connections being drawn all over the place today.
Yeah, it's insane. They're everywhere. So Muppets Take Manhattan. What is that about?
So this is our first one that is from what I can see set in the real world, and not a movie within a movie. Though that being said, it kind of very softly writes over their origin story in a way, and sort of a non-confrontational. Theoretically, they could still exist in the same universe, but I'd need to understand how. Which is basically that this time the Muppets are graduating college together. and from Danhurst College, it says here, and everyone loves their show. They've put on a theatre production called Manhattan Melodies, which you never see or hear a lot of from in the movie, but occasionally they'll go to break out into song to show people when they're pitching it, and it's very funny because it's very quick. It's very quick, and Kermit just goes 1, 2, 3, and then at least 15 Muppets behind him all start moving and singing in unison, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like, I fucking take this for granted, man. Like imagine getting that shot. Imagine you're the director for this film,
right?
And you're trying to choreograph.
Imagine that you're Frank Oz.
Yeah, I'm Frank Oz. So you'll be in the puppets as well, trying to choreograph it so that everyone moves in synchronization. Creatures they can't actually see, for the sake of a joke that's so funny but so intrinsically Muppet you shouldn't really even notice it, And that's what I thought of that one, is they go 1, 2, 3, and then all start bobbing their heads in unison. It's very funny. So basically they all convince Kermit to try and take the show to Manhattan, to get it on Broadway. While they're there though, they start running out of money. Eventually, Kermit stays in Manhattan while a bunch of the other Muppets move around America to get jobs. And eventually, through trial and a lot of hard work, Kermit manages to sell Manhattan Melodies to a big shot Manhattan producer, only to then be hit by a car and lose all his memories. Not before he tells all the Muppets to come back to Manhattan, and so the sort of last act of the film is all the Muppets looking for Kermit because he's gone missing, and then when they finally find him, he can't remember who they are, and it's not until they put on the show that he sort of regains his memories, and then it ends with Miss Piggy tricking Kermit into marrying her.
Very funny.
There's a Fraggle Rock cameo in this movie as well.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with Fraggle Rock.
It's like the
I know what it is, but did you ever watch it?
No, but it's almost like the I want to say like the Futurama to the Muppet Simpsons, and it's a lot more canon heavy. It's a lot more story based kind of things. Or Samurai Jack to the Muppets Dexter's Laboratory is maybe a better comparison. Or maybe I'm just thinking of the Dark Crystal. Maybe I'm just thinking.
Yeah, the Dark Crystal is definitely like a and then they did that reboot, which is apparently very good.
Yes, I've heard that as well.
So this was the final Muppet film before Jim Henson's death.
By the way, the saddest thing ever, man. Jim Henson, what do you know what he died from?
I actually don't. Let me look that up.
Because it was untimely. He was quite young, I think, when he died. Relatively, he was certainly.
Yeah, he was 53.
53, man. That sucks. It's so sad. I listened to a podcast a long time ago that was like a biography of Jim Henson, and it basically sounds like no one in the world was ready for Jim Henson to die.
Yeah.
And it was sort of at the very peak of the Muppets as a feel-good brand.
Yeah, he Streptococcus pneumoniae, an infection that causes bacterial pneumonia, and it was reclassified later as being toxic shock syndrome caused by something.
Damn.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so it was a bacterial infection, really. Yeah. But have you ever watched his funeral?
Yeah, I've watched. This week I watched Big Bird sing "It's Not Easy Being Green" at his memorial, and it's breathtaking.
And there's just one person. Oh God, gets me because it's the song about like if just one person believes in you. Right. Maybe you can do it, and then that one person can become two people, and then the three, and then a whole bunch of people believing in you, and like a different performer comes out like each time until it's like all of these ones, and oh my God, it's like
I read a comment on the Big Bird thing that was basically like, I remember watching this as a kid and wondering why Kermit wasn't going to sing anything, and then realizing because Jim Henson plays Kermit, which is like such a devastating like thing to forget, but also again speaks to the kind of magic of the puppets.
There's a like a Disney released an image of like Mickey comforting Kermit the Frog. And God, I love like those kind of things. Like, like there's the one of when Mel Blanc died, who voiced like all the Looney Tunes of them, standing at like an empty microphone, it just says speechless. There's another good one when Homer's Italian, Homer Simpson's Italian voice actor died, and there's like a shot of him looking really sad and a speech bubble. It's in Italian, but it says, Homer, why are you so quiet today?
That's really depressing.
Yeah.
Back to the Muppets Take Manhattan. I actually do remember some of the songs from this one, unlike the last one. Together Again, which next to Rainbow Connection feels like the more one of the more transcendent Muppet songs. Together Again. But the thing I want to call out in this film is
I'm calling it out.
Is a song called I'm Gonna Always Love You, which is a weird scene and a weird song. So basically, I think it's after Kermit remembers who he is, Miss Piggy is riding with him on a horse and carriage, and no, it must be before this, actually. I think it's after they get back together, because they split up briefly and then get back together. And she says to him, can you imagine what it would have been like if we had met when we were babies? Which I guess is a way to get around canonically ignoring that we've seen them meet in the Muppet movie. And then it cuts to a sequence where Muppet babies sing the song. And it's strange because I always assumed that the Muppet Babies cartoon from the 80s was a cartoon because they couldn't be bothered making the real puppets, but they're right here and they're the exact same designs as the cartoons. And I'm presuming as well that Muppet Babies was a spin-off essentially to the Muppets Take Manhattan. And it's a song sung by a baby Miss Piggy, and she's very hard to understand because it's not a voice that lends itself to clear singing and the type of movie where lyrics are kind of important to understand. But she's essentially singing about like how she's gonna do all these things when she grows up, and she's like, and I'm gonna be a veterinarian too, and I'm always gonna love you, and it's like about how much she's gonna love Kermit despite all the dreams she's going to achieve. It does nothing to the forward momentum of the story. And it's a very strange, I didn't mind the song. It's just the strangest part of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of those classic, like, just bringing the movie to a halt because you came up with an idea for a song.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
This is kind of lighter on the big kind of cameos. It does have it's got a few, Art Carney, Elliot Gould, who makes a second appearance, John Landis, Liza Minnelli, Joan Rivers, Brooke Shields. Actually, it's a pretty impressive list, but it was originally going to have a lot bigger kind of list of cameos. Dustin Hoffman, Steve Martin, Michael Jackson, Lily Tomlin, Richard Pryor, and Laurence Olivier.
Wow.
So Dustin Hoffman was going to play a Broadway producer and was going to do an imitation of film producer Robert Evans, who produced The Godfather. Mm-hmm. He later did an impression of a film called Wag the Dog, but at the last minute, Dustin Hoffman decided that Robert Evans might be offended by the role and dropped out, and then all the other big names just dropped out because if Dustin Hoffman's not doing it. And then so they actually had to like rewrite a lot of the film's dialogue to work around losing all these cameos.
That sucks. That what a bummer. It's the Muppets. You'd pull out all the stops for the Muppets.
Especially someone like Steve Martin has had like a very long-standing relationship with the Muppets. Someone like Michael Jackson, like his relationship with the Simpsons, you'd think that he would like love these kind of like It's with Richard Pryor's in the Muppet movie as well.
So Steve Martin actually. So I think that this is the canonical first appearance of Rizzo the Rat as well.
He's in Great Muppet Caper.
Is he?
And he was in the Muppet Show. He debuted in the Muppet Show.
Yeah, we talked about
a
it
year
on
before the Great
Patreon.
Muppet Caper.
I didn't recognize him in the Great Muppet Caper. He meets the characters in this one. I guess, when they're working at the diner, and I loved the diner owner, who was this old Italian man, and like at one point a bunch of rats and Kermit are asking him for work, and he's like, getting asked for work from rats and frogs. What's next? Penguins? And then a bunch of penguins waddle in and be like, hey, we were just wondering if you had any work for us.
Is that your Rizzo?
No, that was my Italian diner owner. My Rizzo's more like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Muppet voices aren't very hard to do, are they?
Well, that's the thing, I think, yeah. Like, but also Rizzo the Rat, speaking of Dustin Hoffman, the kind of accent and mannerisms are based on Dustin Hoffman's character from Midnight Cowboy, Ratso Rizzo.
Oh, wow. There you go. So I liked this one more than the Great Muppet Caper, but not as much as the Muppet movie. What does it have on Roddy T's?
What do you think?
80.
83.
83. Yep.
So, yeah, above Great Muppet Caper, but
I think I agree with all of these ratings so far.
All right, let's move right along.
Dig it in.
1992, the first Muppets production produced by the Walt Disney Company, and the reason that this franchise makes sense to do at this time of year, Muppets Christmas Carol.
The Muppets Christmas Carol, the only one of these I'd really seen multiple times, and knew a lot about. This is the best Muppet movie, I believe. Mm-hmm. Do you agree?
Yeah. Like Muppets 2011 is very close to my heart.
Right.
So is this film actually, but yeah.
Anyway. I think this is the best one, and I think this created a blueprint for Muppet movies going forward that they, for some reason, only did one more time with Treasure Island and then never picked up again. Because the way we'll probably be talking
there's something
about...
like the Muppet Wizard of Oz feels like an attempt to do this that we discussed last episode.
Yeah, so I think Muppet Wizard of Oz Wizard of Oz just isn't... This is a dumb way to look at it. Wizard of Oz isn't as good of a story as Christmas Carol or Treasure Island. I think that's what it comes down to. It's too rudimentary in comparison.
But yeah, so this was directed by Brian Henson, Jim Henson's son.
Yeah.
And it's the first movie after Jim Henson's death.
And this, I think you can look at the Muppets theatrical films as 2.5 trilogies. Basically, you know, you've got the first 3, which are like the 80s set, almost the Kermit center stage trilogy. Then there's 3 in a row, which I'm going to call the Gonzo trilogy, because Gonzo takes center stage in all 3 of them to some degree, or at least he's pretty prominent, more prominent than Kermit, I would say, and at least Christmas Carol and Muppets from Space. And then you've got the like modern reboot, which they never made a third version of. But I would love to refer to this as the Tales from the Public Domain trilogy. They didn't do it that way. So Muppets Christmas Carol. It's, if you don't know A Christmas Carol, it's essentially a story written by Charles Dickens, set in 18th century? Was it 18th century, 19th century England?
19th century,
about a grumpy old rich man named Ebenezer Scrooge who, on Christmas Eve, is visited by ghosts who show him the past, the present, and the future of Christmas, and change his ways to be from being crotchety and angry to kind and loving. And what's significant about this film is that it stars Michael Caine in the role of Ebenezer Scrooge in what might be the performance of his career. And then also, and then obviously the Muppets round out the rest of the cast. There's a couple of other human characters, but it's essentially it's Michael Caine surrounded by Muppets. So you've got just to go through the kind of characters. You've got Bob Cratchit, who works for Scrooge as Kermit. Fezziwig has changed to Fozziwig, who's like an old friend of Fozzie Bear. Or he's Scrooge's old boss, who's actually not in most adaptations of A Christmas Carol. Yeah.
Miss Piggy plays the Kermit's wife. You got Gonzo and Rizzo are like the narrators of the story. Gonzo's playing Charles Dickens, and so that was their way to be able to have like actual lines from A Christmas Carol in the film. Yeah, those are kind of the main ones, I guess.
Yeah,
and all three of the ghosts are original Muppets. It was originally going to be like I think it was Gonzo was going to be no, Gonzo was going to be future, and he's wearing the black hood with just his nose pointing out.
Yeah.
Piggy was going to be present, and who was it? Scooter or Robin were going to be past.
That does make sense, because that is one of the most interesting things about this movie is that I actually watched a Simpsons episode tonight where they make a joke about how TV shows have been milking dry the Christmas Carol story for years, and they flick on and there's an Urkel one and they change the channel to a Star Trek one. And it is something you see done a lot. Like TV shows have the Christmas Carol allegory episode. Yeah. And when it comes to writing these, it really does just come down to which character is Scrooge and which characters are the three ghosts. And this is one of those things where I look at a movie and I realize it's smarter than me. Like, if I was given the reins, I would not have made this good a movie, because I would have gone, all right, which three Muppets are the three ghosts? Yeah. But they make them these original characters. The Ghost of Christmas Past is a terrifying, like, haunting little wooden
it's like
puppet.
a porcelain doll type looking.
Oh, it's so scary. And the Ghost of Christmas Present is sort of like
it's like Hagrid.
Yeah, and then the Ghost of Christmas Still to Come is
like a Dementor.
He's the Grim Reaper, essentially. Yeah. And it works. The reason this is the best Muppet movie, and the reason this works so well as a movie, is because it takes the serious parts seriously, very seriously, to the point where you forget you're watching a Muppet movie at points, because the Ghost of Christmas Still to Come, if that had been Gonzo, that would have potentially completely sabotaged the dramatic weight of the scene, because you've got Michael Caine, again, giving the performance of his career, begging for his life, and an existential reflection in a character, and you actually get a moment where Rizzo and Gonzo, who watch on omnisciently, where they go, this is getting too scary, we'll see you at the end, kids. So they actually remove what makes it the comedy. They remove because even just looking at a Muppet is comedic, right? So they take that out of it completely. And you just have this beautiful fucking scene that's like, why is this the best Christmas Carol? Why is the best adaptation, you know? And I think what makes the Muppets work so well when it works is how seriously the human actors take the role. Yeah. And they don't always need to. Muppets 2011 is a great example of, like, Jason Segel didn't need to play this straight, and he didn't, and it's fine, you know.
I think we'll talk about it more there, sure. But I like it works so well in this film. Michael Caine apparently like lobbied for the role because he missed out on a cameo, or he missed out on doing an episode of the Muppet Show because he was living in the US and they were shooting in the UK, and he had all these friends, Steve Martin, Sylvester Stallone, whoever, that had said, "Oh my god, I had such a good time working on the Muppet Show," and he was always so gutted that he missed out. And then, so when he found out they were making this, he was like, "I need to do this." And then when he met with the director, with Brian Henson, he said, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working for the Royal Shakespeare Company. I'll never wink. I'll never do anything Muppety. I'm going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me." And Brian Henson was like, "Yes, you get it." Like, and that's the thing. It's not only is it Michael Caine, like you said, it's the performance of his career. Not only is it like, he's great in that movie, it's like he is giving it his all. Like, Michael Caine is now one of those actors similar to Morgan Freeman who will just take a paycheck. And it's quite happy to just show up and do the Michael Caine thing or do the Morgan Freeman thing. But in this, he is giving it his all. And it's like, he understands that the drama works so much better when it's surrounded by all the silliness. It's like, and that's why like BoJack Horseman works, and why Shane Black sets his movies at Christmas, is because if you're going far like to one side, being like, oh, look how silly everything the world is, and like look how jovial it is at Christmas. You can actually go further into the dramatic side because you're kind of tricked along going there. So you're seeing like Michael Caine begging for his life, begging for a second chance at life. But you're like, it's a Muppet movie, so like you're kind of like there's the safety net. And so it's like you can do a kids movie where it's like, he's begging for this. It's fantastic. It's such a good movie. And like this is one of those movies that you think, because I watched this a lot as a kid, and you're like, oh yeah, I must have just liked that because it's Muppets. It's like this definitely holds up. It's on Disney Plus. If you have been thinking about revisiting it from your childhood. But oh god, what a fantastic movie.
It's so good. It's so good. And Michael Caine is so good. And I think, you say, you can go into the dramatic further, but you can also go into the silliness further because, like, it shows how much of a professional Michael Caine is that he can look at these googly-eyed puppets and talk to them so matter-of-factly, and it's so funny. It's just funny because, like, if you take a step back, it looks so much more ridiculous than it is, and that's what, again, part of the magic of the Muppets is being like, you have bought in. You're the sucker, audience member, because this is a googly-eyed frog that you're crying about. Like, you're the sucker. So it's great. It's so good.
Because it is like it's a very good adaptation of A Christmas Carol as well. Like, it shows something that a lot of adaptations shy away from, is showing just how sick Tiny Tim is.
Right.
Whereas, like, you're showing that Tiny Tim dies and that he's like very, very sick in the present day. But yeah, like it's willing to. It doesn't have to shy away from that because, like, it's a googly-eyed frog.
Yeah,
it is. There's an interesting thing that happens a lot on this podcast where we'll be covering something and then there'll be like a new piece of information comes out about it. And I mean, like, obviously when we're covering like a Christmas like thing, there's obviously people talking about it. But
everyone's talking about the Muppets Christmas Carol at the moment. Lessons from the Screenplay did his video, which is like the third or fourth time Lessons from the Screenplay has done a video on the franchise we're doing while we're doing it. But this is the first time I feel like it's been it's made sense. The other times have just been plum coincidence that it's happened.
So there's a song in this called "When Love Is Gone," which is in the Ghost of Christmas Past. He's been shown that there's like so Scrooge's former love sings the song about how his love of money has replaced his love of her. And Jeffrey Katzenberg, famous fucking dipshit. There's Jeffrey Katzenberg who tried to remove Part of Your World from Little Mermaid, and also founded Quibi, which has come and gone in a quick bite itself.
Quibi when it went away came and went so fast. I'm still not actually 100% sure of what it is. No one fully explained it to me until the news was that it was gone.
Yeah, it's insane. There's a super interesting article about like what a fucking stupid idea Quibi is, right. Which see if you can find it.
Hey, and also actually I'll bring this up. I listen to a podcast regularly called Do Go On. And recently they did an episode with Zach from Auntie Donna, new Twitter follower of ours, Auntie Donna, who talked about Jeffrey Katzenberg, and he talked about all the fun, like the insanely genius decisions that Jeffrey Katzenberg is known for, and then was like, and also he made Quibi, and sort of to use that as a metaphor because he was talking about Disney theme parks. And so he was talking specifically about the one that fucking ate shit in the early 2000s as well. And I think that I can't remember exactly, but that might have been a Katzenberg move.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of stories of Katzenberg. Lord Farquaad from Shrek is based off Jeffrey Katzenberg. The not so subtly named Lord Fuckwad. But he's so Jeffrey Katzenberg took the song out of the film, saying that it wouldn't appeal to young children, and they put like a pop cover of it, like the Disney movies, they do like a mainstream singer will do a cover that's in the end credit scene. Brian Henson, the director, was very pissed off about it because the song at the end of the film called "The Love We Found" is like a response to that song. It uses the same melody, and so it's it ended up not being in the theatrical release. It's like it was filmed. It's like a completed scene, and it's on the soundtrack. It's been on every edition of the soundtrack. And the Laserdisc release of it had the only widescreen presentation of the song ever released. They wanted to put it back, so like in the Blu-ray and the DVD, it would be in the extras. It's on Disney Plus under extras, in 4:3. But then they're like, so we probably can't ever. In 2018, Brian Henson said it's unlikely to appear ever again because Walt Disney Company lost the actual video master and the negative, so we can't do like a 4K re-release or anything like that. However, just in the last 2 weeks, Henson confirmed that they've actually found the original film negative and can upscale it to 4K, and it will be included in every future release of the film. Like, they're going to restore the film as the way it was meant to be seen. And he said might be too quick to get it on Disney Plus this year, but 2021, the Disney Plus film should be the entire film.
I watched it last night on YouTube. Would that not have been the upscaled version?
Probably not. I mean, yeah,
I thought it was. I understand Katzenberg saying that it won't appeal to children because there's no Muppets in it. It's not a silly song. But yeah. Like the adult in me is like, oh, this is crucial. It is saved. Have you watched it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it is saved, I think, in terms of its Muppet value as the song, or just as it ends, it cuts to Gonzo and Rizzo watching it, and Rizzo's bawling his eyes out. And I think that's a really smart comedic beat to put at the end there. But yeah, I mean, the Christmas Carol is one of those stories that it's like, I've heard this and seen it done so many times that it's hard for it to be effective now, and yet this is. I care about Scrooge, a character designed to be evil, and it's so effective with that. But talking about songs, as we have been going, doing this for every movie so far, except for The Great Muppet Caper, apparently. This is some of the best songs in it. It starts with, what's the first song called? It's like
Scrooge.
It's just called Scrooge, which is, here comes Mr. Humbug, here comes Mr. Scrooge. If he gave a prize for being mean, the winner would be him. I'm screwing up the lyrics, but whatever.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things. You remember when we did the Santa Claus podcast, how I talked about how the line of dialogue, "He is too Santa," was on some trailer before Aladdin or something, that I would have seen it 100 times. The chorus of Scrooge, the song, must have also been on a trailer.
It was in the trailer. That especially, specifically that line that you butchered.
Yeah.
Was on the trailer. I actually watched the trailer like an hour ago.
And so that song is one of those nostalgic things for me, where it's like, it's not just that I'm listening to a song I've liked for a long time. It feels more like I'm listening to a song that's written in the DNA of me as a person. Of like the very concept of memory is based around this song, Because I would have seen this as a young kid, but I didn't really rewatch it until I was an adult. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think I've rewatched it like in my adult life. I've tried to hunt it down in previous Christmases and not been able to. Back when I would have to go to a video store and it would be rented out. But yeah, I don't think I maybe even watched it in a good 10 years or so. I still remembered it very, very well. But
yeah. Statler and Waldorf play the shared role of Jacob Marley, the ghost.
Yeah, Jacob and Robert Marley.
Yeah, the ghost that warns Scrooge of the incoming spirits.
Yeah, who was an old colleague of him. And the opening line of the book is Marley was dead to begin with.
Yeah.
Which was the Marleys were dead to begin with in this, and which Rizzo calls out as being like scary.
Yeah, where did they get Robert from as a second name?
I don't know. It's just funny though, like the fact that because they do make a bit of a joke. They're like, Jacob, and Robert Marley. Like the fact that it's just like, we just count this name, but they have a song as well where they go, "We're Marley and Marley."
Yes.
Woo!
It's so good, and I feel like that's the best Muppet casting in the whole thing.
Oh, hell yeah!
Kermit as Bob Cratchit, it seems like, and it's Cratchit. It's an obvious one, but like
it's obvious, yeah. Like splitting that role into two, and making it Statler and Waldorf is like a stroke of genius.
Yeah. That's it. Cratchit is like, of course, and Robert and Jacob Marley as Statler and Waldorf is like, oh, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love this movie, man. I love my favorite line from it was when I saw it as a younger kid was when he says to the ghost of Christmas present, "You're a little absent-minded spirit," and he goes, "No, I'm a large absent-minded spirit." I thought that was the funniest shit out, man. When I was younger. So that's good. I love that. I love all the songs in this are great. The I don't know any of the lyrics. That's when you know it feels like Christmas. That one's great. Yeah, everything about this is just what makes the Muppets so special, firing on all cylinders. Because another thing that we sort of talked about with Rainbow Connection that makes the Muppets so special is a deep sincerity to it that I've been thinking a lot over this month as we've been watching Muppet movies about like the big kind of mascot-led companies, pop culture companies. And I feel like if you've got it almost feels, and I know the Muppets is now owned by Disney, but I kind of wish it wasn't, because you've got Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, and Kermit the Frog, right? I feel like they all represent very different approaches to very similar styles of entertainment. And I gotta say, Kermit has become easily my favorite of those three, because Mickey Mouse is the other side of sincerity. It's pandering, Mickey Mouse is like sugary sweet. No one's this nice. Bugs Bunny is a response to that. Bugs Bunny is like your cool uncle, as opposed to
he's like the Bart Simpson.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Kermit and the Muppets in general, like behind him, is sincere, because it allows for Looney Tunes-esque comedy, but then it'll also be like, hey, but you're loved, You're so special, little kid watching this. Like Jim Henson, by all accounts, was like a wonderful person, a Bob Ross type. So I've grown so fond of Kermit and watching these movies, specifically because I find him so complex compared to Bugs Bunny or Mickey Mouse, because he's shy and polite, but then he also like wants to be an actor and wants to be a performer, and it adds a layer to his character where it's like, this is someone who gets nervous all the time, but he has dreams of performing, and like that's it almost feels like they're at odds with each other, because they want the characterization, but they also want, obviously it's the Muppet Show and it's all based in vaudeville and stuff. But it kind of clashes in a way that works, in that it feels like an authentic person, and it is so hard to not think Kermit is a real person, Yeah,
like I genuinely would love to meet Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, man. Like it's so cool. Kermit is such a cool character, and that's why he's so good as Bob Cratchit, because he's the character who's like a toast to the founder of the feast, Scrooge, against Miss Piggy, who's playing his wife, who Miss Piggy is designed like in maybe one of the most extreme foils to a character ever written is Miss Piggy and Kermit, right? Because Miss Piggy is boisterous and loud and rude and angry and obnoxious, and it allows for really tangible learning moments, because you've got the two approaches to things, and maybe that's why secretly their relationship works, is that you've got the sensitivity with the bravery and the strength combined together, I guess.
And what do you think it has that Muppet Christmas Carol has on Rotten Tomatoes?
Would this be the 95% one?
Do you want to guess if it is or not?
It is.
It's not. It has 76.
What? That's the lowest one so far.
Same as the Great Muppet Caper.
What? How is this the lowest one?
Yeah, it's insane.
That is crazy. That is wrong. That is wrong.
So next up we had Muppet Treasure Island, which feels very much like a spiritual sequel to, like, they were like, this is what the Muppets should do now.
And they should have.
And so this is, a retelling of the story of Treasure Island. And this stars Tim Curry as the kind of, he's not the sole live action person, but he's essentially the Michael Caine of the film.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, again, you're getting a big name actor to.
I wish they'd keep doing that. I wish they kept doing that. Instead, we got Ashanti in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. So Michael Caine considers the Muppet movie like one of, if not the best movies ever done. He says it's his most memorable role. Tim Curry says that this is like his favorite of, or at least one of his favorites of his films. And yeah, so what's the kind of story of Treasure Island?
It's a story I knew a lot less than the story of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a pirate story, and there's buried treasure on an island, and the main character, who's a young boy named Jim Hawkins, essentially inherits this map from Billy Connolly's Billy Bones, and he gets a expedition funded to sail to this island, and on this ship he meets Long John Silver, who is the ship's cook, who quickly both bonds with Jim, but then also constructs a mutiny upon the captain, who's played by Kermit the Frog, and they all kind of end up on the island together trying to get the treasure. And it's excellently written, morally grey characters. Long John Silver might be one of the most complex characters in a Muppet movie. I mean, that's
he's a famously, like, the Treasure Island character is famously very complex and he's also having a peg leg or missing a leg and having a parrot is kind of like where those things came from.
Right, interesting. Okay. So it ends, the good guys win, the bad guys get stranded on a different island and things like that. And it's so Jim Hawkins is played by some kid who never did anything else.
Kevin Bishop is his name.
Yeah. But Gonzo and Rizzo sort of play the role of Jim Hawkins is shared by three characters essentially, and it's the real life person, and then Gonzo and Rizzo on either side of him. The captain of the ship is Kermit. The financier is Fozzie. Miss Piggy plays the captain's long lost girlfriend, who ends up living on the island with a bunch of like barbarian pigs, in a scene where I was like, is this in the book? is this from the book? This feels very based in. It feels essential that she's a pig in this scene, so I don't know if this works. Is there any other major Muppet players?
Jennifer Saunders is plays Mrs. Blooveridge.
Right, yeah.
Billy Connolly at the start of the film. This is because I remember seeing this in the cinema when I was 3 years old. Wow. I mean, the fact that I remember this must mean it's like one of my earliest memories, probably. But I remember, going to see it with my sister and mum. And my parents are huge Billy Connolly fans. And I remember mum finding it so funny, the line because Billy Connolly gets the black spot and dies. And Rizzo says, he can't die. This is supposed to be a kid's movie. And my mum thought it was so funny.
It is funny.
It is funny. She's probably listening to this. Hi, mum. And and so Billy Connolly like wears that as quite a badge of pride that he's the only person to ever die in a Muppet movie.
It's great, and he fucking rocks it as well. He's great. Again, it's probably the best acting I've seen from Billy Connolly in this.
Yeah, not from the X-Files movie where his eyes bleed.
No, he's not that good in the X-Files movie. But yeah, Tim Curry is great in it. I think the scene that really got me, and this is sort of the equivalent of Scrooge begging for his life to the Ghost of Christmas Still to Come, is at the end when they capture Long John Silver and he's on the boat and he works out he can escape and he gets into the lifeboat with all the treasure and he starts to row away when Jim pops up and they sort of have a face-off where they're pointing guns. No, Jim's going to whistle and alert everyone and Long John's going to shoot him to stop him. And again, it's Muppetless. And it's like, thank God this is Muppetless. right? Because it's a fucking beautiful scene where you're playing with more complex emotions than you'd see in movies for adults, right? Because you've got this genuine bond created between enemies, essentially.
Well, that's the thing. It's one of those like it's like that we're not so different, you and I kind of thing. Where I think like Long John Silver like really does see himself in Jim Hawkins, and he is genuinely like actually cares about him, but you know they're acting against each other's interests.
Yeah. It's excellent. I mean, it's probably more to the credit of, who is it, Dumas, who wrote... Is it Dumas?
No, Robert Louis Stevenson.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Who's Dumas? What did Dumas do?
Count of Monte Cristo.
Well, there's a Muppet movie waiting to happen, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all thanks to him, I think.
Muppet Cristo.
But yeah, they really sell it, and I think that's what the double bill of Christmas Carol and Treasure Island do so well, is sell the drama impeccably.
Yeah. I think Tim Curry, and I think it's probably it's partly Tim Curry as an actor is having a bit more fun with it, and it's also, I guess, getting to play a pirate than Michael Caine. Like Michael Caine is like, yeah, like you said, this is the Royal Shakespeare Company, whereas Tim Curry is a bit like chewing the scenery a bit more kind of thing. But that's I think a bit Tim Curry as an actor, and a bit the fact that you're playing a pirate and you can kind of ham it up like that.
Yeah, I'd argue that's the difference between Ebenezer Scrooge and Long John Silver as characters.
Yeah, true.
The music in this film, after watching it, I was like, this has the best songs, and now I can't remember any of them. So maybe
When You're a Professional Pirate.
That's good. That's a great song. Or at least I remember thinking it was a great song.
Yeah, that's like his kind of him selling to Long John Silver selling to Jim Hawkins the life of a pirate.
Yeah. And because I feel like a lot of Muppet movies have good songs, but they don't have amazing soundtracks. Does that make sense? Like I always like one or two, but in comparison to like something like The Lion King, where it's like, oh, these are all great songs. Like,
yeah, I would say that's somewhat remedied in the last two films we'll talk about.
Absolutely. For
good reason.
And completely sideswiped in the next film we'll talk about, which has no songs in it for some reason.
So there's a really funny. There was a lawsuit involved in this film. So there's a character named Spam, obviously named after Spam. Who's one of the tribal pig characters. And Hormel Food Corporation, the creators of Spam, sued Jim Henson Productions for using the name. So the judge dismissed the suit because they couldn't prove damages, with the judge noting on the dismissal, one might think that Hormel would welcome the association with a genuine source of pork. Such a fucking sick burn.
Wow. That's like the Spam people then going back and being like, fuck, we shouldn't have done this. Defeated by the Muppets.
Yeah. Interesting, so Rolf the dog.
Yes, a Muppet we haven't talked about at all.
Yeah, who's great. Yes. But he's so he wasn't in Muppet Christmas Carol. He appears non-speaking in this one, and that was because so he was originally played by Jim Henson, and he was the last one to be recast after Jim Henson died. Right. Apparently, because he was actually considered most similar to Jim Henson's actual personality, and so. They were kind of like, I don't know if anyone else can do that role. So he's in here non-speaking, but then he is later recast.
Interesting.
But yeah, that was interesting.
Such a sordid history of Muppets, man. Like and I was thinking about this the other day. Between productions, what do all the Muppet people do? Because they've gone years without producing anything, it seems. Did they just pull back the old gang together again? And I'm not talking about the Muppets. I'm talking about the people behind the Muppets, right?
Yeah. Like, well, I don't know. I think there's a lot of like appearances as well that like we don't see necessarily. Like they go on talk shows and shit like that as well.
Frank Oz will be all over Sesame Street as well, surely.
Well, Frank Oz has retired from Muppet performing. Muppets from Space, which we'll talk about in a moment, was the last Frank Oz film. And I think in Muppet Treasure Island, as well as Muppets from Space, he actually wasn't a puppeteer because he had other things. So he just Kevin Clash, who plays Elmo, did most of his characters, and so
Is Kevin Clash still employed by the Henson Company?
oh,
Is that the worst actor to be outed as being a sexual deviant? Was the voice of Elmo? I always felt like that was devastating.
But also, let me just double check. But I think weren't the claims found to be like unsubstantiated?
Perhaps, I don't know. That's a good point. I shouldn't take the drama for the dramatic value that it is without doing my research.
Oh no, they were dismissed because they the allegations exceeded the statute of limitations in Pennsylvania.
So he could still be a dirtbag.
Yeah. This isn't about Kevin Clash, but anyway, so he played them, and Frank Oz gave him kind of notes. He said that Miss Piggy is a truck driver wanting to be a woman, and that Fozzie is like Jerry Lewis, and so he gave him kind of all these notes, and so he performed them on set. They recorded the table read, and he kind of went off that, and then later on, Frank Oz overdubbed the roles.
Okay.
So for on set, he was doing the performance, and having to like speak along with it. But then it's actually Frank Oz's voice in the film.
Right. Okay. That's what I was going to ask, because I didn't know Frank Oz was in Knives Out, so I didn't know that he. And Frank Oz was in Knives Out. That was the first time I saw Frank Oz, and I cannot picture that man with that voice playing those characters. It's
playing
actually it's actually insane to me that he can do that voice. But then I think but then I also think like I can do Miss Piggy, and I don't sound like Miss Piggy, So maybe it's the same thing.
But he's not in Muppets 2011 or in Muppets Most Wanted. He's not involved at all.
Oh, so he doesn't play them in those movies?
No. After in 2000 he retired from puppetry.
But voice acting?
No. Yeah, he retired fully from the Muppets.
So who plays his characters in the later movies?
They like replaced him with someone. Let's have a look.
Oh wow.
What's his name? Eric Jacobson. So from 2002, he took over like all of Frank Oz's characters.
These legacy voice actor roles, like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and the Muppets, like they always do such a great job of replacing the voice actors to the point where it's like I can kind of tell the difference between Mel Blanc's Bugs Bunny and Billy West's Bugs Bunny, but not really.
I can definitely tell the difference between what I like. The three Kermit the Frogs we've had, Jim Henson, Steve Whitmire, and Matt Vogel, I can tell the difference between them. I think, like, I grew up with Steve Whitmire, so he's kind of like... Yeah. And so Jim Henson sounds slightly different, but I add, like,
They actually play them next to each other in Muppets Most Wanted as well, and I could kind of tell the difference there.
But Matt Vogel, to me, sounds so different. But I also, like, I've only seen... He hasn't done as much... Anyway, so that is Muppet Treasure Island, and also fun fact. So we mentioned the Count of Muppet Christo, but apparently Muppet Treasure Island, it was either going to be Treasure Island or a King Arthur story.
Exactly,
and they decided to go with Muppet Treasure Island, and also Jim Hawkins was originally going to be Rizzo and Gonzo playing characters named Jim and Hawkins, but then they were like, no, let's put a human in and
you do need
give it a bit more dramatic weight.
What does this have on Rotten Tomatoes?
What do you think?
70.
73.
Interesting.
So this is the lowest one yet.
Who are these fucking haters hating on the Muppet movies,
Yeah.
Who are these soulless cretins thinking that the two, probably my personal favourite Muppet movies, I think, would be Christmas Carol and Treasure Island. Who are these people thinking they're bad?
So next up in 1999, we had Muppets from Space, directed by Tim Hill, who directed Spongebob movie, Sponge on the Run.
Oh, wow.
Which we spoke about in a Patreon episode recently, and Max Keeble's Big Move. What's this one about?
So Gonzo is feeling out of place. He doesn't know what he is. He's been referred to for the last 50 or so years as a whatever, when asked, Kermit the Frog and Gonzo the whatever. And so he's having an identity crisis when he is communicated with by aliens and told he's an alien. And so he sets out on sort of like a journey through. It's not it takes place over like one day, so it's not as cross country as I remembered it being. He ends up in like an Area 51 type place being experimented on while the other Muppets are trying to save him before they all go to the beach and everyone's there, and they're all partying because they're going to meet aliens. And the aliens come down, and they all look like Gonzo, and they offer him a place on their ship to go up and live with them, but he decides to stay with the Muppets because he's found his family. And Jeffrey Tambor is the villain, and he goes with the Gonzo aliens instead in the end. This is the one I'd seen this most recently out of no. This I remember. I guess I just remember this one better. It felt more ingrained in me because I'd seen it as a kid more than the two before it. So, like, even though I do consider these past three kind of like the second trilogy, I saw Muppets from Space and it felt like a new movie, whereas Treasure Island and Christmas Carol felt like 30-year-old movies to me. You know, they're only a few years apart.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because Muppets from Space feels very much like a 2000 movie. It's 1999, but it feels like that era. Whereas, like, I like, and I guess it's just like we kind of grew up a bit, and then like they feel like different eras. But yeah, this is another one I remember seeing the trailer for a lot, and I remember the joke at the end of the trailer was Jeffrey Tambor like pulling up Gonzo's hook nose and saying, "No nostrils. How do you smell?" And Rizzo goes, "Terrible. Trust me, I'm his roommate."
It's so Muppetsian.
And that was another joke that I remember my mum like pissing herself at.
That's so funny. That's such a mum joke. Like mums in general, you know. This is somewhat milestone in our podcast, because since podcast 1, or maybe podcast 2.
It was podcast 2.
We've been joking about the idea of an in-space sequel. The character in space as a sequel title.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time we've had sequels that have been in-space sequels, but this is the first time where it's actually been like the title is pretty close to in space. It's Muppets from Space, but I think in space is originally derived from a sketch on the Muppet Show called Pigs in Space. So there is still a connection.
I remember there's a joke in that. So it's a Star Wars parody, and they've got their Darth Vader parody, which is Gonzo, and so it's like the black vinyl helmet, but like with a big hook nose. And it's like, who is the mysterious whatever it was called? And then he's like, the world will never know. And he like turns to his side and you see like the very distinctive nose.
That's great. So yeah, that's kind of fun. This movie in general, I think, is pretty clearly the weakest of the theatrical releases.
Yeah, this is kind of the one that like killed the Muppets. This was needed to be rebooted 12 years later. While promoting The Muppets 2011, Kermit in a radio interview said, with all due respect to the two Muppets from Space, you don't want that to be the last movie you ever do. You want to do a better one.
Interesting. I think this has the reputation of being like the bad one. Yeah, it's desperate for a original soundtrack as well. There are moments in the movie where it feels like we should be breaking into song, and we don't.
There's they do the whole kind of plot is based on Gonzo's song "I'm Going to Go Back There Someday" from the original Muppet movie.
That's so dumb. This is such a dumb interpretation of that song.
Do you want to explain what you mean?
Well, because he sings a song in the Muppet movie when they're like stranded in the desert, and it's essentially Gonzo's Rainbow Connection. But not as good and not as memorable. And it sort of alludes that he's an alien. But I read a thing about this, actually. I was reading up about Rainbow Connection, and apparently they're trying to say he was a bird, but they didn't want to say he was a bird. So it's like he's talking about going back to the skies, being part of something again. Which is sort of what the plot of this. I love the start of this movie. The start of this movie is a dream sequence where Gonzo's trying to get on Noah's Ark, and it looks fucking cinematic. That opening shot, and it's like the storm, and you see Noah's Ark, and then Gonzo pops into frame wearing like the traditional garb. I was like, this looks great. But yeah, the most interesting thing about this movie for me is that it starts with all the Muppets living in a big house together, which I thought was really fascinating. And as someone who's lived in a flat for the better half of a decade, I was like, what would a flat with all the Muppets be like? And everyone's like lining up for the bathroom and that sort of thing. And so I found is there anywhere else that says the Muppets live in a big house together?
I don't know.
Yeah. It felt like a significant thing.
I mean, obviously, there's like extended canon, but yeah, there was originally more music. The band Ween wrote a song for it, and then which was I think a riff on "I'm Going to Go Back There Someday," or it might have even been another arrangement of it. And then they decided, oh no, we want the whole soundtrack to be like funk and soul music, and licensed music. And they said, oh, you can cover Brick House, and then Ween were just like, nah.
So they just used Brick House.
Yeah.
Pepe the King Prawn this is the only movie that he has a major role in. And I thought he was hilarious. There's the best joke in it is when Pepe and Rizzo prank Gonzo, who thinks he's hearing from aliens, by telling him that, by like whispering to him that he needs to make them a jacuzzi, and then Gonzo, they decide they need to tell him the truth, and they're like, all right, you got to tell him. He's like, no, you got to tell him. And Rizzo is like, you got to tell him. And then Gonzo runs past the scene exclaiming how he's heard from the aliens and he's going to run out and meet them, and he runs straight past them, and just before the scene cuts, Pepe turns to Rizzo and goes, you should have told him. It's so funny. I really enjoyed that. I thought the plot of Miss Piggy, it's probably the best Miss Piggy plot we've seen.
Oh yeah, she's like a wannabe journalist.
Yeah, and it's sort of, there's a little bit of her proving herself in there. Ray Liotta is in this. There was a fun guest star.
Andy McDowell.
Yep.
Rob Schneider.
Yep. But yeah, I think this is the weakest one, and I think it needed music. And it's
it feels like an attempt to start something new that didn't work, and so they're like, well, let's just never do the Muppets again.
And this is set in the real world as well. So the two Brian Henson ones are like, I guess you can surmise they are movies put on by the Muppets. They don't ever really say that technically, but you could probably figure that out by the context of them being public domain stories. So this is the second movie since Take Manhattan, I think, that never says it's a movie within a movie, which all the other ones do, or implicitly do.
Yeah. So actually, talking about the in space thing as well. Sorry to go back to that, but this was actually originally called Muppets in Space, and the original screenplay had aliens abducting Kermit. Because they believed him to be their leader, leading the other Muppets to save him. And then there's a few changes. The co-writer left the project before shooting because his draft was filled with like parodies of Men in Black, Contact, and Alien. And then they fired the original director, and then they thought he wasn't bringing enough vision, and then took out all the parodies. And so he was like, well, I'm leaving the project then too. He just liked the revised ending of the film where it's like, yep, Gonzo, there's a whole race of aliens that are Gonzo. And it does feel like one of those things that's like, we should have never known what Gonzo is, and he should just be a whatever.
No, it's the same as doing that Community episode where the Dean admits he's gay, which I actually quite like that episode, but like...
Well, he doesn't admit he's gay.
That's true. That's true. But the
whole point of the episode is that
the show takes it from something in the background into something in the foreground, which is like a classic mark of a joke that's existed in something for too long, right? When they have to start making stories around. I mean, The Simpsons is full of it, right? Doing things that they have to.
Well, I mean, it's like the classic that like Star Wars has been doing of like explaining shit that didn't need explaining. But the original ending of the film would be that aliens would come down and they would, similar to how it happens in the movie, they would all look like Gonzo, but then it would be revealed that they were getting broadcasts of the Muppet Show and believed Gonzo to be the ultimate being, and so like shapeshifted to look like Gonzo. And then in the end, they would reveal their true forms, and Gonzo would remain a whatever.
So what public domain space adventure should this have been? If they go, we're doing a space one, are there any classic public domain space stories? There's got to be like a Jules Verne. It's probably not published.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Jules Verne sci-fi books.
It'd be like Mission to the Moon, the Lumiere.
Journey to the Center of the Earth.
Yeah, well, that's...
From the Earth to the Moon.
Is that the Lumiere one?
No, that's Jules Verne.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's what it should have been, right? I don't know if Jules Verne is...
From the Earth to the Muppet.
But yeah, I don't know. I think, I don't have too much else to say about this movie. Bobo the Bear is in it. I like him.
Yeah. Well, there's another film with Bobo the Bear in it. What do you think this has on Rotten Tomatoes, actually?
65.
63. You're doing very well.
Thank you.
This film also was the first appearance of Scooter in 8 years.
Wow. Holy shit. What happened to Scooter?
I don't know. Just wasn't around. But all right, let's. Now we're up to 2011. Where we got a film just simply titled The Muppets. It was directed by James Bobin and written by Jason Segel and Nicholas Stoller. This was the second film they wrote together, the first being Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is such a funny, in 2008, they went to Disney and said, we want to do a Muppet movie, and they were like, oh, you did just get your dick out. And Forgetting Sarah Marshall, I don't know if this is the best image, but then, they could see, shit, this guy's the real deal in terms of being a fan of the Muppets. Between these two films, the Muppets and Muppets from Space, Disney bought the Muppets in 2004.
Yeah,
and we'll talk about it a bit more, but they seemingly just have no idea what to do with the Muppets,
which is sad.
And is apparently Bob Iger is just didn't really grow up with the Muppets, and he's kind of not a big fan. The guy who was supposed to be taking over as CEO, I don't know what's happening with that now, but he's more of a lifelong fan. So if that takeover ends up happening, because they reversed it,
right?
But I think it might have been a temporary reversal where Bob Iger said, "Oh, and I'll stay on for a bit more." He's apparently a bigger fan of the Muppets, so it'd be cool to see if something goes there.
Interesting.
So what is the Muppets 2011 about?
So this is set in the real world, and it is about a pair of brothers. One is played by Jason Segel, and one is played by a Muppet. And they're called Gary and Walter. And Gary, who's the human version, has a girlfriend named Mary, who's played by Amy Adams. And they are going to celebrate their 10-year wedding anniversary by going to LA. And they invite Walter along to go to LA with them so that they can go on the Muppet Studio tour, because they were both massive fans of the Muppets growing up. And we talked last week about, is there a difference between a Muppet frog and a regular frog? And this film seems to really, it never outright says it, but to me it heavily implies that, Muppet is a genetic condition. If you could have a brother who's a Muppet, and it's 1 in 500 million people are born as, or creatures are born as Muppets, right? And it's you're made
but it's
of
also
felt.
it's never addressed the fact that he's a different creature to.
No, I know, but
Jason
that's
Segel.
what I'm saying is that they watch the Muppet Show growing up, and they don't outright say it, but it feels like Walter sees this as representation. Almost, and that's why he wants to be a part of it. So they go to the Muppet Tour, and it's really lame. And then Walter sneaks into one of the buildings where he finds
Kermit's old office.
Yeah, where he finds out that Tex Richman, who's an evil oil baron, played by what's his name? Chris Cooper. In the silliest fucking role he's ever done. Holy shit, it's so funny. He finds out that he's planning to bulldoze over the Muppet Studios to dig for oil. So they go to warn Kermit. They need $10 million to buy the theatre back, and Kermit says the only way they're going to be able to do that is to get the gang back together, because the Muppets have dissipated and are no longer together. So there's sort of the middle act of the film is them getting all the Muppets back together and then putting on a show, which is a telethon full of celebrities to raise enough money to buy back the show. And that's about it, right? That's the main...
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. And there's a relationship drama between Jason Segel and Amy Adams.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do you think of this film?
I think this is a very flawed film. I do. I think that when I first saw it thinking, this isn't very good, and then watching it at the back end of all the Muppets, I'm like, okay, the very the type of stuff that Star Wars keeps trying to get away with, but everyone complains about, of like nostalgic reunions, works really well with the Muppets because it's more metatextual, I guess. So I really enjoyed the references to the first Muppet movie, and I really enjoyed seeing Kermit and get the gang back together. I thought that was very fun. The music is great, and it's probably the best music the Muppets collectively has ever been.
Yeah, so the music was done by Brett McKenzie. I remember seeing interviews with Jason Segel at the time where he talked about how he's like, I can write songs. I can write good songs or I can write funny songs, but I can't do both at the same time. And so that's why he got Brett McKenzie from Fly the Conchords and from New Zealand to do that.
Rip New Zealand, represent.
And so he got him in to do that, and then ended up winning an Oscar for Best Original Song for Man or Muppet, which beat Real and Rio from Rio to win Best Original Song. And I'm not just saying like, wow, like cherry picking one other nominee to be like, wow, can you believe it beat this? There was only 2 nominees that year.
Crazy. You could nominate more songs from the Muppets.
Yeah, exactly. But so the way it works is essentially between 1946 and 2011 that you vote using like a point system. You score them, and then however many songs got above 8.25 were eligible for nomination. And if no song qualified, there'd be no nominees. And then if only one song achieved that score, the next the next highest one would just be a second nominee kind of thing.
Yeah.
It usually resulted in 5 nominations, except for 2010 when there was 4, 88, 2005, 2008 when there were 3, and 2011 when there were only 2. Was the only time that happened. And then they changed it, and now it's contingent on the number of submissions.
Right.
So there's either has to be 5, 3, or none. And since then, there's always been 5, except one was disqualified in 2013.
Right. My favorite song in the Muppet movie is the first one, which is
Life's a Happy Song.
Life's a Happy Song. When there's someone by your side to sing along, and I do like the other songs in this movie, but it's that thing where like, you know how Americans find the New Zealand accent really funny? We talked about this with Julian Dennison, right? I have a little bit of that in this, where like I can so hear the Flight of the Conchords DNA, and things like Man or Muppet is such a Flight of the Conchords song to me. That
because you said to me earlier in the week that it borderline doesn't work if not sung by Brett McKenzie.
Yeah, I think I stand by that. I think some of it, I think the movie benefits from Flight of the Conchords still having like not reached. I feel like Flight of the Conchords are like still kind of B tier famous as opposed to A tier famous, right, maybe. And so you can hear these songs and you go, it's a funny song. But things like Man or Muppet, or there's the song that Chris Cooper sings, which you brought up, where at one point, what's the line he sings?
He's like, I'm Tex Richmond, Mr. Texas T. People call me rich because I got my money.
Which is, how can anyone but Brett McKenzie sing that line?
Yeah,
you know, that's
like it sounds like Brett has been overdubbed for that one word. Like,
yeah, money. And Man or Muppet, the lyrics are like, "Am I a man or am I a Muppet? Well, if I am a man, then I'm a very manly Muppet." And it's like, I don't know. It's very. It's the type of stuff that the Flight of the Conchords guys enjoy playing with in terms of the wordplay. And
yeah, I feel that a lot more in the second film, in Muppets Most Wanted, which he also did the music for, which we'll talk about when we get to that. But
I feel the opposite.
Yeah, like Man or Muppet, I don't necessarily hear the Brett influence in that.
Right.
Let's Talk About Me, I think it's called, the Tex Richmond one is just 100% Brett, and apparently Brett was like on set coaching him how to rap and how like, you know, like kind of rap movements that people do.
I mean,
because he's credited as like the songwriter and the music supervisor, so I guess his role is to teach Chris Cooper how to rap. Brett
should have maybe played Tex Richmond, right?
Well, do you know actually that the role was written for Alan Rickman?
Wow. Oh my God. Imagine that. Wow. That is that kind of Michael Caine prestige that would have really worked in a Muppet movie. This is playing, that being said, this is playing a completely different game too.
Yeah, that's the thing. Jason Segel, Amy Adams are playing like a very heightened reality. And it's kind of like they're existing in a world where everyone's really bright-eyed, and it's like it's somewhat Brechtian
Yeah.
and the kind of like they're just saying how they're feeling and they're showing it really with their emotions. And
Yeah.
I think it's not like one way is right and the other one's wrong. I think that I think this movie works. I love this movie. I like, and it holds a very special place in my heart. I remember when it came out, because it was one of those films that came out a lot later in New Zealand than it did in the rest of the world. And I went, like, me, Tyler, who listens to the podcast, Ben, who listens to the podcast, all went to the movies at, like, it was like 10 a.m. on a Thursday. I think it must have been during school holidays or something like that. And went to go see this movie.
Well, you were out of
at, like,
school
the very first screening available. Huh?
I was going to say you were out of school by the time this.
I was studying at a course
right.
that had school like terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went to the very first screening of it, and we got there, and it didn't have, like, the Muppets wasn't on the marquee. They didn't have posters up or anything like that. We're like, oh my god, like, what if we got the day wrong? And I remember Tyler saying, and I still think about this all the time, that he is like, oh, Richard, you got up in your Kermit the Frog pajamas, you slid down the banister, and we're like, oh, Mum, I'm gonna go see the Muppets today, and I remember, because this was, I think, the first time.
It's like the start of a Muppet movie.
Yeah, I had, like, these two friends from separate worlds who were meeting for the first time, and I remember Tyler saying, "Where's the Muppets, Ben? Ben, where's the Muppets?" And I was just like, just seeing two friends, like, engage in a joke together. I was like,
That's very sweet.
And it was also, I think about that all the time, just like, where's the Muppets?
Yeah.
But then, of course, when they actually, like, the cinema actually opened up and we were able to get in, and I think we were, it was a very empty cinema, but I do remember, because the end of the film, when you actually, like, see the show, there's a big, like, whole cast performance of Rainbow Connection, and this woman stood up and clapped along with it and made her kids stand up, and, like, danced with them to Rainbow Connection. That was very weird.
That is inappropriate for the movie theater. In comparison to the Muppet movie, which I mentioned at the start of this podcast, I felt didn't strive for attempting any kind of meaningful story arc. This is kind of the opposite, where the story arcs are very messy. The Chekhov's guns are very, very poorly handled, I think. This is all saying, like, why I think it's a messy movie, because it starts out and it's a movie about two brothers, and one of them's a Muppet who looks up to the Muppets. And it's like, okay, cool. These are my main characters. By the halfway mark, it's about Kermit. Like, it's all about Kermit. And it has no idea. It maybe knows what to do with Walter, but Jason Segel and Amy Adams, like, have nothing to do for so much of this movie. And I feel like it doesn't balance these things very well at all. Which, again, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter because of how much fun it is. And I still think this is a great movie. Of course I do. Like, how could you not?
And what do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
This will be the 95% one.
It is 95%.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd attribute that more to when things are rated on Rotten Tomatoes. It's obviously, like, a lot more kind of... it's just a good movie as well. It's very, like, it's hard to dislike because of its sense of humor, its self-awareness, and the fact that it is bringing these beloved characters who have been gone for so long back into the limelight. And I mean, because that is how the film ends as well, is that they don't manage to save the theater, but then they're kind of they leave the theater and everyone loves the Muppets again. It's kind of it's the thing about, you managed to go the distance even though you didn't actually win. Yeah, exactly. Cool. It's got Bobo the Bear in it, who's the partner of Tex Richmond, along with Uncle Deadly, a character I looked up to see what he is, and it doesn't tell you.
He was originally he is the Phantom of the Muppet Theatre.
Yes.
He was introduced as. But he hadn't appeared in anything in over 20 years.
You can tell because he comes out of nowhere. And it's one of those things where the Muppet seems to be also very consistent with who is a Muppet, as in who is part of the troupe, and who is... Because I've only ever seen Bobo the Bear in these evil sidekick roles. Whereas Muppets Most Wanted breaks that, I think, with Sam the Eagle. which we could talk about if you want to move on to Muppets Most Wanted.
I do not.
Okay.
I have a few more things I want to say about this film. There was originally Elmo had a cameo when they're looking for a famous guest star, and the joke was going to be that the lawyers wouldn't allow Elmo to appear in the Muppet Telethon, but the lawyers didn't allow that scene to happen in the Muppets.
Oh, well.
So Courtney Love, you know Courtney Love, Kurt Cobain's widow. Kurt Cobain's widow gave an interview in which she accused the Muppets of raping Kurt Cobain's legacy by covering "Smells Like Teen Spirit" with a barbershop quartet, and the filmmakers never received her permission. Although Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl, the remaining members of Nirvana, Dave Grohl, who has a cameo in the Muppets, both thought it was hilarious and loved the rendition, but would not comment on what Courtney Love said.
Or you just know Dave Grohl fucking hates Courtney Love. You know those two fucking hate each other, eh?
Yeah, I think she has publicly stated that she fucking hates Dave Grohl. But Dave Grohl has such a funny cameo on this. We see the
Dude, Dave Grohl's cameos are the best in the business. Whenever Dave Grohl cameos in something, it's so great because the reaction every time is that Dave Grohl? And it's these thankless cameos where he's playing
like in Tenacious D, Pig of Destiny.
Yeah, exactly. Like very silly kind of like.
Yeah, because so there's we see Fozzie when we catch up with Fozzie. He's at a hotel and casino in Reno. As the leader of the Muppets, who are like the evil Muppets, and the drummer for them is Dave Grohl as Animal. So they're all like evil versions of Muppets, but then Dave Grohl's just playing Animal, and he doesn't have any lines, and the camera barely focuses on him. You see there's like a shot of like all the Muppets laughing together, and Dave Grohl's just standing over them being like, ha, 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 yeah,
man, is that Dave Grohl?
And also I love that scene as well where they're performing a version of Rainbow Connection, which is about, it's like, why are there such great deals on our hotel rooms?
It's so great.
And it's such a perfect like bastardization of that. A couple more just like fun little behind the scenes things, and then we can move on. But there was supposed to be a joke in it where Kermit would say to the telethon audience, "Oh, this went so well, we're going to bring back the Muppet Show this fall on ABC." And Disney apparently wrote like their notes in the script. It just said, "Nice try." But this is a really a really bizarre, like, I can't believe that this was thought of. Is that in an early draft of it, Tex Richmond was going to reveal to have been Kermit the Frog in a human suit, having made up Tex's plans with the intent of getting the Muppets back together. The idea was dropped after it was thought that the children would be confused seeing Kermit lie, and Steve Whitmire even swore to have his name omitted from the credits if it made that into the final film.
Hell yeah, man, because that's completely antithetical to Kermit as a character. Yeah. That's such a betrayal, yeah.
And Frank Oz, now having retired from Muppet performing, disapproved of the script and thought it was disrespectful to the characters. But then after seeing the film, he modified his statement, saying, "I thought the film was really sweet and fun, a little too safe, a little retro. I prefer more cutting edge in the Muppets, but the main thing is everybody got back to appreciating the Muppets. It brought back people to the Muppets, although they never really left. It's always been kind of a subculture. It's always been there in our popular culture a little bit, so I'm happy that people are happy."
He's right. He's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to The Force Awakens. It's like, this probably isn't the best thing, the most exciting thing you could have done, but it's got people interested in Star Wars again. And then obviously, we know what happened there. But there's like the joke about fart shoes where Walter's like, "The Muppets are so talented," and then it cuts to Fozzie being like, "Check it out, guys, fart shoes," and he's just wearing whoopee cushions on his feet. And that was like a really controversial joke. People like, this is like too lowbrow for the Muppets. This is like, they shouldn't be doing this. But the joke is that it's a bad joke that the Muppets wouldn't do. But yeah, so took 3 years, but we got a sequel. I remember like thinking there was a time when this wouldn't get a sequel. Like it feels like one of those things that felt so up in the air for ages. And then it's like, oh my God, it finally happened. But it was only 3 years. It's like a pretty normal time for sequel release.
Oh, dude, the same thing. Like, I had resigned myself that we would never see a sequel to The Dark Knight. Like, I lived a life believing that would never happen, and that life was 4 years. It felt like my entire high school was based around that, but yeah.
But yeah, we got The Muppets Most Wanted, again directed by James Bobin.
It's actually just Muppets. They dropped the.
So yeah, Muppets Most Wanted. And we'll talk about titles in a little bit.
Okay.
So, Muppets Most Wanted. What is it about?
So The Muppets Most Wanted takes place directly after The Muppets, where they're now the Muppets back together. What are they going to do? They are convinced by silver-tongued Ricky Gervais to go on a world tour, which is actually a front for Ricky Gervais, who is working for a Kermit doppelganger named Constantine, who's the most dangerous frog in the world, is his title. And the plan that they execute is they replace Kermit in the troupe with Constantine, and go on this world tour, which is conveniently next to all of these museums where they can break in.
It's not convenient. It's designed.
Sorry, that's what I mean.
Like,
Yes. Next to all these museums where they can break in and steal stuff because they're looking for someone or other's treasure. Meanwhile, Kermit goes to a Siberian prison where
a gulag
where he makes friends. That's it. And then in the end,
the good guys win.
Because Constantine proposes to Miss Piggy to try and get her to shut up, and also to plug a bomb on her ring, and Kermit turns up. And there's what I thought was a very sweet moment where Miss Piggy knows which one is Kermit because she asks Constantine, "Will you marry me?" And he goes, "Of course, pig." And then she asks Kermit, "Will you marry me?" And he goes, "Oh, well, yeah, I the thing is about that is," and which is like, it's like, that's fucking genius to like do it
because the answer isn't no as well, and also you can tell that Kermit is like obviously wants to say yes, because his life is on the line, but then also just like can't bring himself to lie about it
because he's a good person. Because Kermit is a good person, and that's so sweet that it takes a sacred and kind of intrinsic element of Kermit's personality and uses it to complete a character arc between, or to round off a conflict that's been at the heart of the whole movie between Piggy and Kermit, because it's of course established earlier. I think I like this one more than the last one, but that being said, I think it also feels like a piece of Wikipedia or IMDb trivia you read where it's like, originally they were going to go with this idea. It feels like it's that idea, the one they didn't go with. But ultimately, I liked it, I think, more. I think the character moments, that Kermit thing I just mentioned really got me.
Yeah.
And I think I liked the music overall. I disagree with what you said before. I felt like the music in this one is much less Brett McKenzie-esque, to the point where when I saw his name pop up in the credits, I was like, what? I never heard this because Brett McKenzie on the first Muppets one was like, that was publicized. It was national news. Whereas this one, you never heard any of it, and he didn't win an Oscar for this one. I don't think they were even nominated for this one.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, I loved the songs in this one. I loved there's a song called "Thank You Muppets, No More Questions" that's sung from Sam the Eagle, Ty Burrell as they're interrogating the Muppets, and it's very funny. And Ty Burrell is so good in this movie. He's such a joy.
That's something I want to talk about, and it's because you mentioned they almost went with this idea, but then they didn't. So yeah, the three main human characters are Ricky Gervais as Dominic Badgie. Dominic Bad Guy, Ty Burrell as an Interpol agent, and Tina Fey as the main guard at the Gulag. And it's like, they're all great in their own way, but I imagine if these were like, because the first person cast in this film was Christoph Waltz as the Interpol agent, and
wow.
He had to pull out because of scheduling conflicts, and then ended up still doing a cameo. But imagine this film with like Christoph Waltz as the Interpol agent, and like Kate Winslet as the Gulag officer, and then like fucking Edward Norton as Dominic Bad Guy.
That's pretty good.
That would be like just because to take that fully seriously, and like replacing Christoph Waltz with Ty Burrell seems like such a bizarre choice.
Mm.
It feels like this is what we're going to do with this film, and they're like, oh fuck it, we'll just stick a bunch of comedians in it. Like,
yeah. I mean,
this is also jam packed with cameos. There's 24 different cameos in it. The best one, the funniest joke in the film is so there's three people. Jermaine Clement, the other half of Fly the Conchords, is in this film.
Yeah.
There's like a trio of him, Ray Liotta, and Danny Trejo, who are playing prison inmates.
And I was like, Ray Liotta is bigger than this. he's like a background dancer.
In fucking 2014.
Maybe not. Yeah.
B movies. Ray Liotta
I
is
don't
too
know.
big for a Muppet sequel.
Not too good, but it's weird that it's such a reduced role, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It's like a featured cameo kind of thing. But there's a joke where Kermit is like looking up at the sky and the gulag, and Tina Fey's walking along saying goodnight to all the inmates, and she's like, good night, Christoph, good night, and then good night, Zach, good night, Danny Trejo. Just the real, Danny Trejo's playing himself in a Siberian prison.
I cackled, especially because Danny Trejo is not necessarily a household name either. So, like, of all the, like, you'd pick Ray Liotta in the obvious version of that joke, but now it's become like this almost underground.
It's so funny.
Joke.
It's because it's also like as the scene is fading out, or her voice is fading out. It's such a good joke.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about Danny Trejo's mum passed away while he was filming his last few scenes, and he like was finishing his last couple of scenes and was just trying to get through it kind of thing so he could fly back for to California for the funeral. And the whole cast and crew were like, oh man, like, offering condolences, and he's like, oh, like it's all good. But then it was Steve Whitmire as Kermit the Frog in character like offered condolences to him, and he broke down crying from being comforted by Kermit.
Oh, imagine doing that. If I was Steve Whitmire, I'd be like, seems inappropriate. But I'm glad it wasn't, but I wouldn't have had the confidence.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's also a really good joke as well where they're looking for an usher at the wedding, and it turns around and it's Usher.
Yes. So one of the problems I had with the movie, as I mentioned before, is Sam the Eagle plays Ty Burrell's opposite as the FBI agent, which I felt betrayed the canon, because this again is set in the real world. They kind of treat the last one actually as a movie that they just made. So this is almost like a third layer of Muppet reality. And we've seen Sam the Eagle be part of the Muppets, so it felt weird to see him acting as a neutral agent. And I was like, well, who would it be? Who could you cast as the American FBI agent? And I was thinking, at first I was like, okay, well, who was big in 2014? To which the one and only answer to that question is Miles Teller, who was only big in 2014 and never got big again.
That's the same. Like, if you're having to replace Sam the Eagle with a human being, you go with Nick Offerman.
Yeah, that's a good one as well. Actually, that's good. I thought Miles Teller got me onto J.K. Simmons as well. Probably would have done it as well. Bryan Cranston probably would have done it. I think. Yeah. I think looking at it from a certain point of view, it's almost like it kind of has to be a Muppet, doesn't it?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, it has to be. You just go with Bobo the Bear.
Yeah, man. Yeah, although he was in the last one, I guess.
Yeah, but who cares?
Yeah.
Sorry. Back to the music in this film. Because I didn't watch this film when it came out. I bought it on Blu-ray and watched it a few years later. But because the music from Muppets 2011 is so like ingrained in me for the last 9 years, and then Muppets Most Wanted, I'd seen it once before this, and I was kind of like, oh yeah, I vaguely remember some of the songs, but fuck, the music's good in it. Like, so there's
great.
The Big House song, which is Tina Fey sings, introduction to it. The opening song, We're Doing a Sequel, is fucking fantastic. It's such an amazing number. And there's like an extended version, which has an extra joke, but there's a couple funny jokes in the song where they go, we're doing a sequel. How hard can it be? We can't do any worse than The Godfather 3, which we've also covered. And then there's another joke where they go, we're doing a sequel. The studio wants more while they wait for Tom Hanks to do Toy Story 4.
Yeah, that's great. My favorite line, and I've looked it up to get it right. is they go, we're doing a sequel, and then Dr. Bunsen goes, I don't mean to be a stickler, but this is the 7th sequel to our original motion picture.
Yeah.
Which was like, oh my god, directly into me, AJ Alexander Jones. This joke was made for me, made for our podcast, right? And that's actually I'm ashamed. That's the first time we've mentioned Dr. Bunsen Bunsen Honeydew, and Beaker in this episode, who I love those characters.
Yeah, Beaker, my favorite Muppet. I do want to say though that I think part of the reason that and also so the song that Constantine sings to Miss Piggy to convince her that he's like in love with her, when it's like, anything you want, I'll give it to you. It's like, you want to da da da, I'll give it to you. You want to da da da, I'll give it to you. That is so Brett.
Yeah,
that's just a Flight of the Conchords song.
No, you're right. You're right.
If that was in Flight of the Conchords, you wouldn't be like, this feels out of place.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you want a cockatoo, then give it to you. You want a Malibu, and they go, you want to go to the moon? I'll see what I could do.
You're right.
But there's actually,
right.
Brett McKenzie sings a version of that song. There's a music video for it where it's like Brett singing to camera. And it's like a fully produced music video. And on the soundtrack for this film, which I'm gutted isn't in the last film, but it has all of Brett McKenzie's demos. So it's like him singing The Big House, which he sings. When you listen to him sing The Big House, this is a very obscure reference for our international listeners, but it sounds like a Black Seed song, which was the band Brett McKenzie was in before Fly the Conchords. But then he does the demo for We're Doing a Sequel. And I was like, I wonder what this would sound like coming out of Brett. But he does all of the voices.
Oh my god,
it's
I have
so
to
good.
listen to this.
You have to listen to it. But yeah, his version of I'll Give It to You, or whatever the song's called. It's great. There's like a music video, and it's like, this is just a scene from Flight of the Conchords. This is essentially like a kid-friendly if you're into it.
Yeah, exactly. Here's the lyrics from the big sort of like comedic set piece of that song that I've got in front of me. It says, you want a unicorn, I'll give it to you. You want a puppy dog, I'll give it to you. You want an ice cream cone, I'll give it to you. You want a banking loan, I'll give it to you. You want a satin pillow, I'll give it to you. You want an armadillo, I'll give it to you. You want a diamond ring, I'll give it to you. You want a thingy thing, I'll give it to you. Then later on it says, you want a taste of fame, I'll give it to you. You want a little cupcake, I'll give it to you. You want a cockatoo, I'll give it to you. You want a kangaroo, I'll give it to you. You want a brand new car, I'll give it to you. You want a Hollywood star, I'll give it to you. You want to go to the moon, I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
It's fantastic. But that's such a classic Brett McKenzie song.
You're
but
right.
Yeah,
You are right.
I would definitely recommend
said.
going out and listening to his version of The Big House and We're Doing a Sequel, because it's so funny hearing Brett do like a voice I'm so familiar with doing Kermit, and then when he has to sing, he'll like kind of give it up for a couple of words and then it'll come back. It's so good.
That's great.
But yeah, I was impressed with how much I liked this film after kind of just writing it off as like a not very good sequel to The Muppets. I think because up until watching things for this podcast, realizing like just how much it's like, yeah, it's The Muppets, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
At the very least. And what do you think it has on Rotten Tomatoes?
70.
80. Although I remember when it first came out, it's like when the Rotten Tomatoes first started for this movie, the what do they call it? The review embargo was lifted. It was on 40%.
Wow, that's very
bad. And then it rose to 80 over the
That's such a success story. When else has that ever happened?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen it go the other way, but all right, so that's the 8 films in the theatrical Muppet canon. Did you have anything else you want to say about Muppets Most Wanted before we move on to one of our segments?
Yeah, can I segue into that sequence by reading you some lyrics from We're Doing a Sequel that could be a nice segue into the segment?
Are you doing it?
Am I allowed to?
I said yes, sorry, yeah.
All right. So at the end of the song, they sing, we've got another go to show them we can do it all again. We're doing a sequel. It's more of the same. Let's give it a name. How about The Muppets Again? It's The Muppets Again with The Muppets Again. It's The Muppets Again is the end of the song. Before the title comes up, revealing the title, of course, to be The Muppets Most Wanted.
Muppets Most Wanted. Yeah, so this film was announced as being called The Muppets ... Again! ! That was the official thing. And so it's fucking mental that they didn't cut that part of the song. Like, the film explicitly tells you the title is going to be The Muppets Again.
Yeah.
And then they just don't call it that. And it's never addressed. They don't make a joke out of it. They don't have again come up and then cross it out and say most wanted. It's just... who signed up on that and who thought it was that? It was okay. I get not calling it The Muppets Again. Like, I think it's a cool title and it fits the world of the Muppets, but I can see why a studio would be apprehensive about that. But my God, why would you leave that in the song?
Or you should change the song to be all about what they're going to title it. And have those fake titles come up on screen. And I'm from New Zealand, so I'm more Brett McKenzie than a lot of the people who will be listening to this. I would have made the whole song them trying to work out the title and have the title come up on the screen, and then end it on it being called The Muppets Again before being sideswiped into The Muppets Most Wanted, if you had to call it that. Because another one is The Muppets World Tour, feels like an obvious
that
title.
Feels like, yeah.
Yeah.
We have Muppets on Tour or something like that. Like, it's one of the most baffling kind of title quirks we've ever seen to me anyway on this podcast.
Sure,
but like, I think it's we're doing a sequel is such a fucking banger, and it's such a great opening to the movie.
Yeah.
That I can see why they would be like, well, we can't get rid of this. We can't touch this.
Yeah, you can touch it a little bit. You can change the last 5 lyrics in the song. I think part of it, I wouldn't be so mad if I didn't. I don't really like Muppets Most Wanted as a title.
Yeah, it's just kind of boring. It's the original title for Great Muppet Caper was called Muppet Mania. Although Jim Henson didn't like the working title, and he got pretty much everyone to just suggest titles for the movie. Some of the more interesting ones include The Rocky Muppet Picture Show, A Froggy Day in London. However, it was his 19-year-old daughter who came up with The Great Muppet Capade, but then also said, you could do like Escapade or Caper or whatever. And he was like, Great Muppet Caper, I like that.
Yeah, I do too. I think they're cool. And the Muppets cheats my usual sticklerness for titles by being inconsistent from the start. Like, I think it's kind of annoying that the Treasure Island one, the actual title is Muppet Treasure Island, not the Muppets Treasure Island, like the Muppets Present Treasure Island. It's just Muppets Treasure Island. But, like, they've been inconsistent the whole way through, so that's also acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, but then also... the Muppet Christmas Carol isn't Muppets, it's Muppet Christmas Carol. So,
is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was
the Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island.
Okay, well that works. Nice.
Yeah, good on you, lads. All right, so we can move and right along. I haven't made that joke in over an hour.
Dugga-dun.
To continue the franchise. Do you want to explain what this segment is?
Continue the Franchise is a segment that we do every episode on the show where we try and pitch a sequel to the franchise we've just watched. But before we do that, we discuss all the wonderful, possible, cancelled, upcoming sequels that are still to come of The Muppets, which is a confusing thing to do for this time round because, as we say, The Muppets extends beyond just movies. So I guess... we'll talk about where the Muppets is at the moment.
Yeah, I kind of just said like, what's happened since Muppet Most Wanted.
Yeah.
So there was ABC's The Muppets, which was a workplace sitcom in the style of The Office, where it was like that mockumentary kind of format and it had the Muppets working backstage at late night with Miss Piggy. She was a host of a late night show. I watched like half of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was cancelled after one season. And apparently, after I think they made 16 episodes, and after 10 episodes, they retooled it and it like to try and improve it. I remember the 3rd episode, I think, had a joke that I like pissed myself at, and I was like, "This is the funniest joke I've ever seen," and I have never been able to remember what that joke was, and I haven't revisited the series. I think it's a fucking amazing idea. I think it's a fantastic. I'm so gutted that this didn't go longer. It's such a great idea of like how to bring the Muppets into the modern age. It was like a little bit more brought the Muppets back to their roots, that it's not really like a kids show. It's supposed to be appropriate for children, but that's not their target demographic.
Yeah.
And then there was also, and for TV shows, there's also Muppets Now, which was this, I think, 6-part series which came out on Disney Plus this year. And it's an unscripted thing, so it's like interviews and interacting with real people.
I was just gonna say we should just do the ABC's The Muppets for film franchise follow-ups. I reckon that'd be a great way to because it's not very long, so it'd be probably a pretty easy way to consume a TV show, which are always a bit more special.
And it is on Disney Plus as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But also announced for, well, actually, technically never officially announced. But there was a show which Josh Gad and the guys behind Once Upon a Time were working on a TV series called Muppets Live Another Day, which was going to be set after Muppets Take Manhattan. It also apparently had a working title, Muppets 1984 at one point, which is when Muppets Take Manhattan came out. And it was going to be the Muppets had disbanded after the events of Take Manhattan and would reunite after Rolf disappeared. And then it's in September 2019, it was announced that these series had been scrapped due to creative differences following an executive change at the Muppet Studio. But yeah, I'm gutted that, like, because like I said
that's
before,
just such a fascinating idea to actually take into consideration the canon of the Muppet movies, which feels very genuine and what the show does at its best, but also kind of distinctly against the studio mandates of whoever's controlling the Muppets, you know?
Yeah. But it seems like, and Frank Oz has said this as well, that like the Disney just doesn't know what to do with the Muppets at the moment.
Yeah.
And they kind of just, it sucks because it's such a lucrative franchise. It's such a, and that's kind of why, like they just need to be brought back to the forefront. And Jason Segel's not in Muppets Most Wanted because he said, I've like accomplished my mission of bringing the Muppets back into the public eye with the 2011 film. I don't need to do it again. And now they're fucking dead again.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, have you got an idea for continue the franchise?
I have a couple. One is very small. I was doing the thing where I was trying to think of, like, in the Brian Henson series, what Muppet public domain story should be brought back. And I thought a cool one to do would have been Muppet Odyssey, like Homer's Odyssey, which is got a lot of pigs in that story. People get turned into pigs, all sorts of things. So I feel like it could work really well. And you'd have a mainline actor playing Odysseus, and all the that one I feel just lends itself. The Simpsons have done the Odyssey as well, so I feel like that would work. But instead, what I want to focus on is a sequel to Muppets Most Wanted, called The Muppets in Love. And I want to recenter Walter as the protagonist for the third part of this trilogy, and have it kind of focus on Walter falling in love with a non-Muppet character and explore these themes that I'm very interested in of what does it mean to be a Muppet? Not philosophically, like literally, what is a Muppet? What is a Muppet? What does this mean? And sort of explore things like when the guy's way shorter than the girl, which is a subject very close to my heart. And yeah, use this as a avenue to do that. Where it's like if the Muppets 2011 is like a classical throwback to what they've always been about, and the Muppets Most Wanted is a crime, international
What's a throwback
crime.
to the Great Muppet Caper?
Yeah. I want to do like a rom-com.
Nice.
So that's mine. The Muppets in Love, which I think it feels like fits with the titling scheme of the last ones. Yeah.
Well, it's with me. I forgot to mention this, but the Muppets 2011 was like marketed as a rom-com. They released a trailer and posters for Green with Envy, starring, and it was like there's a trailer which was just all the over dramatic parts, and then it was like starring Jason Segel, Amy Adams, Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it cut to Jason Segel with like in the scene where there's a room of like full of Muppets, and he goes, "Wait a minute, are there Muppets in this movie?" And then that changes to like a trailer for that.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's great. But my idea for continuing the franchise is, so I was thinking about, because part of me was trying to just think of like, okay, what public domain stories can they do? And then I was thinking about, well, Disney fucking doesn't know what to do with the Muppets. But what they should be doing is, instead of just these shitty live action remakes, they should be doing Muppet remakes of their films.
Yeah, man. That's
Like,
a
I
good
mean,
idea.
a lot of them are based on public domain characters, but there's a very Disney skin to these things. So it's like, yeah, do the Little Mermaid, but everyone except Ariel is a Muppet. Do Beauty and the Beast, but the Beast is Sweetums.
In Sweden's most prominent role in the entire Muppets history.
Yeah. So that's like,
It's a good idea.
bring the Muppets fully into the Disney canon.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Richard, in terms of what we've got next for the show, this was going to be our last film franchise Fortnights of the year, but a part of us, we've got some plans, specifically the most disappointing films of 2020 part 2. I think we both feel like we still need a couple more weeks to catch up. And so we're going to be doing, we're not going to do it a fortnight later, we're going to do it next week as a bonus film franchise Fortnights for the year. We're going to be covering, I think it's called Follow That Bird and Elmo's Adventures in Grouchland, because it didn't feel right to be the comprehensive franchise podcast and ignore Sesame Street entirely, even though watching the Muppets, they couldn't feel more separate to me in a way now. But there are 2 Sesame Street feature films, so we're going to be covering them for a bonus episode of Film Franchise Fortnights next week. And right now we're going to rank the Muppet movie with our list of franchises on Ranked at Franchise, letterboxd.com/cultpopture/list/FFF-ranking, where we rank all the franchises we've ever watched. So this includes the straight-to-DVD/VHS/made-for-TV movies that we covered last fortnight, but it's being represented just by the Muppet movie 1979. Where do you think this should go on our list of currently 120, including the Muppet movies? There's 120 films on here.
I think it should be quite high.
Yep, I agree. So let's start at our top 10, right?
Yeah.
So at number 10 is The Terminator. Do we think it's better than The Terminator?
Yes.
I think it's earned more. It's more like none of the films are better than Terminator 2, but they each mathematically earn higher stake than the Terminator as a franchise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if each franchise has 100, Terminator 2 has 70, and whereas all the Muppet movies have like, a consistent number each, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not very good at maths. Okay, so going up from the Terminator, is it better than the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, considering we take into account the fact that the Hobbit trilogy, like a tumor on the body of the Lord of the Rings, drags it down?
Yeah. So this is the thing, and this is one of the points of contention of Ranked at Franchise and considering things different franchises. If you're just talking about like how someone would feel when you go, like, what do you think of Lord of the Rings? It's not necessarily that they're including the Hobbit movies, but it's the same as like Game of Thrones. It's like, what do you think of Game of Thrones season 1 to 5 or whatever it was? It's like, well, they're some of the best TV ever made, apparently, but you can't help but know that it's leading to this point.
Yes.
And same with like Star Wars would be like that as well, where it's like it just has all these things that you, even though you're just saying Empire Strikes Back is one of the greatest movies of all time, you know where Star Wars is heading. I think the Muppet movie has that, like the Muppets as a conglomerate is very positive for me. And I think for you. And so I think it's like, it jumps up a few more places because it's like, it's when you think, okay, what do you think of the Muppets? Like everything around it is so solid. And then most of the movies are also great on top of that.
Yeah. So you think it leapfrogs Lord of the Rings then?
Yeah.
All right. So next is the Raimi Spider-Man trilogy, which I don't know if it is better than. I think we might have found its place.
Okay.
Above that is the MCU.
I think I could put it above Spider-Man because Spider-Man has Spider-Man 3, which, while I love, is not a very good film.
All right, let's put it between Spider-Man and the MCU then.
All right.
At number 8, the 8th best franchise we've watched. Happy with that?
Like, yeah, after doing quite a few shitty films this year, we've just in the last few months, we've managed to add 3 franchises to the top 10.
Slowly pushing Lord of the Rings out of the top 10, and I know what franchises we have still to do, and it won't stay in there by the end of this podcast's lifetime.
Oh, no, actually, sorry, we have already done Yu-Gi-Oh! So...
So that is really interesting to see the Muppet movie in that placing. I'm more interested by Lord of the Rings and Terminator now being out of the top 10 because they're way more frequently listed on Reddit threads as the greatest franchises of all time. But we are the experts and we call the shots. So thank you for listening to this episode. Is there an ending to the Muppet Show that usually happens that we can,
It's time to stop the music. It's time to turn off the lights. Yeah. Funny story about that theme song. There's a woman at work who has that as her ringtone. And working in a busy newsroom, you get calls quite often. And my God, it's fucking loud and it's real annoying whenever it plays. And then her text tone is minions laughing. So we hear those quite a bit.
Very cool. So if you like this, please subscribe to Cult Popture on all the places: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Follow us on all those places. We have 2 YouTube channels. One's called Cult Popture, one's called Cult Popture 2. We renamed it from the Cult Popture podcast to Cult Popture
again.
Essentially, it's TOO exclamation mark, where we put all our podcasts and movie club stuff. And I think we'll probably put a little Patreon reward that has just been unlocked from reaching 50 patrons. We'll probably go on that channel as well.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So check out Patreon to see what that is, I guess. Or are they public or is that private? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, thank you very much for listening, everybody, and stay tuned for the post-credit scene after the music stops at the end of this episode. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, welcome to the post-credits scene. Today we're going to look at a question or a topic to discuss submitted by our patrons over at patreon.com/cultpopture, and you too can do this by donating $5 or more to us a month. Such a small amount of money. And this time our question comes to us from, let's go with this one.
Okay.
Yeah? This one comes to us from Ben Close, who says, "Heyo, up top, I just want to give a massive thank you for answering my last question about work fatigue. I believe it was on the Terminator episode. Your words were genuinely really meaningful and encouraging, and I handed in my resignation a few weeks ago. Fuck yeah, Ben! Still have no job lined up for next year, but actively looking. If anyone's listening and needs an assistant editor, please hit me up."
If you'd let me know earlier, I'm just left my job as an editor. You could have had that.
Oh, there you go. And I've just left my job to do nothing. And he says, "My question is, why do rats eat so much garbage when they're such naturally talented cooks?"
Of course, a reference to Muppets Take Manhattan, where Rizzo works in a diner.
There is a Ratatouille flair to Muppets Take Manhattan, isn't there, because of that? I don't know. Richard, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. I'm quite a reasonable cook, but I eat fucking garbage as well.
And you're a fucking rat too, aren't you?